Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Trevion, and you are watching none other than the Lion Son's Den, or listening, because it's people that be watching this on YouTube. So usually what I like to do when I'm starting my lives is to begin with either a prayer or a quote. And on today, we are going to be using an African proverb. So this African proverb goes as follows. A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse into the grave. This proverb warns that without good counsel, an individual is vulnerable to destructive situations. The fly's fatal complacency in following the corpse is a metaphor for a person who either ignores or does not have wise guidance and faces dire consequences as a result. Now, with that being said, just to sit and kind of dive into that, right? You know what? No. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Hold on. We're gonna get there. So here is my thesis statement for tonight's live. Social media perniciously leads to us becoming more egocentric. Okay? And I really want to expound on this. Now, bear with me, because I'm pulling this idea together in a real raw, natural fashion, right? So I want to just get into defining a few things here, right? So first of all, let's just go ahead and define what pernicious means. So pernicious, adjective, having a harmful effect, especially in a gradual or subtle way, right? So essentially what I'm saying is social media has a harmful effect in a gradual way, leading to us becoming more egocentric. Now, I want to explain a little bit more on what I mean by that. So, to draw a parallel or a comparison, right? I want to describe the dating industry, and this is finna get into some things. So the same thing, right, that dating apps did to dating is what social media does to socialization. Allow me to explain. So first I'm going to get into this point, and then we're going to come back to the main idea. So let's talk about dating, right? When you are dating someone, okay, dating usually happens in a very real, raw, and organic way. And the organic nature in which dating happens forces us to step outside of our boundaries, right? Not our boundaries, but it forces us to step outside of our environment. Dating usually happens in either a second party or a third party space, right? So first party is like our home, second party is school or work, and third party is, someplace like an art exhibit or a library or a lounge or something like that, right? Where we kind of socialize and mingle and gringle with each other. Usually you fall into dating somebody because you either meet them at work or you meet them in that third party space like school or a library. Now, the thing with dating is dating cut all of that, right? And dating apps cut all of that. And dating apps put you in a position where all you had to do was download an app, create a profile, and then boom. Now, what I'm going to say is dating apps commercialized, or rather commodified dating, right? And it made speed dating. And the thing about speed dating is it gives you all the benefits of being in a second or third party space without any of the etiquette or any of the social guidelines and boundaries being present, right? Essentially, it gives you everything on demand. And the thing is, when you create this speed dating atmosphere, it desensitizes people because, again, they're not required to have to step out of their norm. They're not required to actually necessarily put in, work. there is now a more black or white narrative that happens because of dating apps. And that black or white narrative is either you are what I want or you're not what I want. Dating apps come and they promise us that, you know, they're going to help us cut away all of the fluff, right? But a lot of that fluff is necessary. So now, and that fluff that we consider to be fluff is really, again, you having to organically meet somebody and the build up and the time that it takes. Now all of it is like very, very, you know, quick, fast, and to the point. Dating apps have now positioned us into a place where we treat each other like checklists. So when you make your dating app profile, you're just checking off, okay, are you tall? Are you my particular zodiac sign? Are you from the place that I like? Are you this, like this? Da, 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 da. And that creates a more egocentric atmosphere, right? And the reason being is because now people are no longer people. People are now labels that either fit into a box or don't. And not only does this desensitize you to treating people in such an inhumane way, but it also gets you used to treating yourself in an inhumane way, because now when you get on a dating app, you're questioning, okay, does my picture look good? Is my profile right? You know what I mean? We're starting to now devalue dating in developing relationships to nothing more than superficial things of, do you have height, and are you this, and are you that? Now, the reason why dating apps create an egocentric environment, and just to define, I want to go ahead and I want to define egocentric really, really quickly, just for the people that might not know. Okay, so egocentric, adjective, thinking only of oneself. Egocentric, adjective, thinking only of oneself without regard for the feelings or desires of others, self-centered. The reason why dating apps create an egocentric environment is because you do not have to get to know the person. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to relate to them. And also, you are not in a third party or second party neutral space, right? Everything takes place on your grounds, right? So everything is, and even in, right, when we talk about dating, right, creating a dating profile, all of that, all of you're looking for is, are you what I want or are you not what I want? And again, what we're looking for is very superficial. So you're not really able to gain the depth that meeting a person in real life would get you. You're just looking at a person through a screen and you're just looking at them superficially. So if they fit into what you like, then you get to know them. If they don't fit into what you like, then you don't get to know them, as opposed to being in a real life example. Because even if a person per se isn't your height or something like that, you're still able to get to know them and still see them. And so to a degree, they're still humanized, right? You may not like them, but it positions you in a place where you can still get to know them. Not only that, when you're meeting a person organically, you're able to look at a person outside of your type, right? Which does not happen on a dating app. When you're meeting a person in person, you're around them, you get to experience them, and you may be able to realize, oh my God, okay, well, I actually like you and you're not my type, but I still like you though, and I actually still wanted to date you. The thing about dating apps is that you are solely in control. And because you are solely in control, your entire preference is dominated by you, right? Which is why I say that it's egocentric, because it's specifically designed only to cater to your needs, desires, wants, and interests. And it gives you sole authority to either get to know a person or not. But again, prolonged exposure to that becomes pernicious, because you get desensitized to realizing you're treating people like they're a checkbox. And if there's an X in the box where a check is supposed to be, you completely and totally dismiss them, and you don't even give them the opportunity and the chance, right? It becomes extremely too superficial. And again, being in that environment where we're not meeting people organically, it can lead to us gaining a false sense of control, and it can also lead to us gaining a false, reality on what dating really looks like, right? And all of those things create an egocentric dynamic. Moreover, they also create egocentric bias, right? Egocentric bias is a cognitive bias that causes people to rely rely on their own perspective when considering situations, leading to them overestimating their importance and contributions, and to assume others share their thoughts and feelings. The thing of why dating apps create this egocentric bias is because, yet again, there is no contrast. You know what I mean? You're not being subjected to anybody or anything outside of your worldview. And when your personal view of people and dating and relationships goes unchallenged, you essentially create an echo chamber. And that echo chamber perfectly encapsulates, or what's the word I'm looking for? Insulates. It perfectly insulates you and your ego, right? Now, now you see how I explained that? That is exactly what social media does, right? And we have to be very aware, and we have to be very, very mindful of this. And I have some things that I kind of want to discuss and I want to talk about, okay? So the thing about social media, I do not believe that social media is a replacement for real world social engagement. In fact, I do not believe that social media should even be called nor considered social media, because it's really not social media at all. There is no socializing that's really done, and I do not think that it is a healthy metric for developing and creating healthy relationships given the atmosphere of social media. Social media is exactly what dating apps are. Now, let me go ahead and get into my reasons as to why I say this, okay? So, number one, social media does not operate in a third-party space. So why are third-party spaces so important? And again, bear with me, because this is coming straight out of my mind to my mouth to y'all. So bear with me, bitch. So, okay, let's talk third-party spaces. When you are in a third-party space, right, it is a neutral ground. What do I mean when I say a neutral ground? It's a neutral ground, meaning it is not influenced and controlled by you, right? When it comes down, let's say, for example, an art exhibit. You decided to go to the art exhibit, but you can't control the art. You cannot control the art that is put on display at the exhibit. You get what I'm saying? So there's a level of control, but there is a level of mitigated control that you have at a third-party space. This mitigated sense of control you do not have on social media nor on a dating app. And the reason being is because you are a sole unchecked authority, because your algorithm is what? Perfectly curated for you. Which means 9 times out of 10, because your algorithm is perfectly curated to you, you're not gonna go out of your way to watch or engage with content that does not align with you. And because your algorithm is catered to your interest, it can also build this false sense of reality. Social media for us feels like it's real, but we have to understand that social media is not real, nor is social media reality. Social media is an orchestrated reality, right? Because we are able to decide what we want to listen to, who we want to listen to, and moreover, not only that, social media is an unmitigated entity, right? Bringing it back to a third-party space. A third-party space is neutral. You can decide to go to the art exhibit, but you cannot control what art is put on display, which means that yes, you're gonna come and you're gonna experience what you want, right? But you are also gonna be subjected to things that you don't like and you don't want, right? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna see Jean-Baptiste presenting some art, but I'm also gonna be able to hear other artists, and that is gonna give me a real-world perspective. Because the thing about it is, in reality, you do not get to control the narrative. In reality, you cannot control who says what and what says who. You can't get to silence people and listen to people and tune in to people. In the real world, you are constantly, and I would say always, surrounded by people who have different and varying views than you, right? And the only way that you get to kind of control the narrative or create an echo chamber is usually in your friend groups, right? You can be around friends who only think like you, or you can stay in your hometown. But even then, there are still going to be experiences that vary. There is a level of mitigation, and there is a level of things that are out of your control. Moreover, going back to like the third party space, when you're at that third party space, so for example, the art exhibit, like I said, you're able to see different artists and you're able to see different art that changes your worldview in a way that if you had the option to, you would not have chose. You wouldn't have chose to go out of your way to see that different art exhibit. Why? Because that's not what you came here for. But because it's there, you're experiencing something new, and then you realize something new about yourself. You realize, oh my God, actually, I do love this thing. And even if you don't like it, it's still a healthy level of contrast that social media, again, does not offer. Moreover, when we are going to third-party spaces, and let's step away from third-party space really quick, right? Let's talk about all three-party spaces. When it comes down to your home, there is a level of etiquette that you have in your home, right? You act a certain way when you at your house, right? You don't act the way that you do and you're in your home the way that you would at work. And the way that you act at work, you don't act like that in a third-party space, right? Every space has a different role and a different function, and therefore a different etiquette. And because of this, what this does to your brain is this gives your brain healthy contrast, and it teaches you etiquette, right? And it teaches you to have to build the interpersonal skills to read the room and diversify yourself, right? It allows you to understand what is socially acceptable and what is not socially acceptable. So therefore, the way that you would behave in your personal time, you're not going to hang and behave like that, when you're at that third party space or when you're at work. Moreover, right, when you go to work and when you go home, there's a break that you get, right? You're not always at home. You're going to work. You're not always at work. You're going back home. This gives you the time for introspection, and this also gives you time for reflection, because there's a distinction between that, right? You know how to leave what you had at work and then come home and leave what you got at home and then go to work. Moreover, if I am at work, right, and I and I go to work, when I'm coming to work, there's an etiquette. I'm here to do a job, and I'm here to behave and act a certain type of way. When I'm at work, I'm going to meet friends. When I meet friends at work, when I leave work, that relationship ends and stops there. When I come back to work, that relationship picks up, right? And if I decide to develop that relationship outside, I now know that I'm going into a different territory. Because of this, I am able to understand various social territories. This is something that social media does not offer. Why? Because in social media, there is no particular guideline. There is no social etiquette. In social media, anything can go, right? Because when you look at social media is a jumble of all three of those spaces. Social media gives you the intimacy and the vulnerability of an intimate relationship that you would get with a family member, a romantic partner, or a friend. But then it behaves like a third-party space, right? Like a library or like an art gallery. But then there's also this business aspect to it, like an actual job. And I argue that this creates a discrepancy because it's too confusing and it intertwines a lot of things, right? But moreover, when you also look at social media, notice how all of those different three, first party, second party, and third party spaces, all of those spaces are unique and all of those spaces are different. The thing about social media is designed to give you a fix of dopamine, which creates an addiction, right? And this addiction is naturally mitigated when you are in the real world, because when you go home from work, whatever frustration you had at work, it's done there. That joy and that happiness that you had, in your social setting, you step away from that, right? Because you can't be there all day, every day. So that gives you a level, like a healthy level of balance. On social media, you get endless dopamine. You're not able to challenge or check yourself unless you have the discipline and the awareness. And the discipline that it takes to utilize social media can be a very difficult thing, because you may be unaware of the level of discipline that you even need. Like, you may not even be aware of the fact that, okay, well, me being on social media is really driving me into a dopamine hole. Outside of social media driving you into a dopamine hole, it's important to note that because social media is an echo chamber, and because there are people that share the same views and the same thoughts as you, it is so easy for the things that you see and engage with on social media to become your view of reality, because all you're seeing is numbers and labels on the screen. You're not really dealing with like real human beings. So, you know what I mean? If I'm seeing countless videos of people being depressed and people saying that life is super hard for them, and life is really, really hard for me, it can create this echo chamber where I feel like, oh my God, life is really, really, really hard for all of us, right? But that's not something that really happens with those three spaces that I mentioned, because you get a natural break from those spaces, right? Now, something that I want to talk about, right? I want to talk about the guidelines, right? How those three spaces I mentioned have guidelines, and social media operates in these three spaces but has no guidelines. Allow me to explain. So I got to go back to my notes. All right. So on my notes, I wrote down a few things. So here's the thing about social media. Social media is extremely too intimate. Okay. And what do I mean when I say social media is too intimate? Social media is too intimate in the way of you are able to see people inappropriately dressed online. You have to understand and I'm not saying that this is bad, right? But for the sake of what I'm talking about, let's pretend that this is a bad thing. It's inappropriate to be able to see somebody, taking a shower, but you can watch somebody taking a shower on social media. It's inappropriate to know people's family business, but you can know people's family business on social media. It is inappropriate to be able to, see somebody laid up in their bed or in their bedroom on social media, but you can see somebody's business on social media. What I'm saying is social media offers the intimacy of a platonic relationship, of an intimate relationship like a partner, or a family member. The things that people know about you on social media would be things that only people who know you in real life would know. So what happens is this, right? When you open up the door and you're sharing all of this intimacy, what does it create? It creates a false sense of establishment, often known as a parasocial relationship. A lot of influencers and social media users complain and reprimand people for overstepping boundaries with them, but you have to also keep in mind that when you're putting and involving people into your personal life in the way that you are, people are naturally going to develop a false sense of security. Because why? In a third-party space, you would not do that. In a third-party space, it would be impossible for you to be dressed in a bonnet. Like, it would be impossible for you to wear a bonnet to, to an art exhibit. You know what I mean? It would be deemed socially inappropriate for you to talk about certain business. The only way that you would divulge certain intimacy is if that space was curated for that, right? If I'm having a space where we talk about childhood trauma, then I would talk about that kind of stuff. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't come to an art exhibit and talk about how I rolled my man in reverse cowgirl. You know what I mean? It wouldn't do that. So again, people get on social media and they complain about parasocial relationships, but they don't understand that when you share so much of your intimate life with people, it creates this false sense of reality that then causes people to engage with you as if they are your friend. And then you challenge because you like, oh my God, these people are not my friend, right? And even that can get nuanced, because either people begin to think that they are your friend and they begin to cross barriers with you, or you begin to think that these people are your friend and then you realize that they actually do not give a fuck about you, right? Because you're not developing real relationships. You're developing relationships through a computer. It is not real. It is not genuine. It is solely a computer. Now, going back to the egocentric establishment that I talked about, in the same way how dating apps dehumanize us, right? Why do dating apps dehumanize you? Dating apps dehumanize you because the only thing that you become is a profile and a set of qualities. And if those qualities and if that profile is not in alignment with what the user or the viewer wants, then they just swipe right on you. Consistently swiping left or swiping right on a person, it trains you to not see them no longer as a human being. You get used to the idea of, okay, well, you're not really, you know what I mean? You become desensitized to it because it's like, oh, well, I like you, I don't like you, I like you, I don't like you, I like you, I don't like you, I like you, I don't like you. And now it becomes an inconvenience to be a respectful human being, right? Getting to know someone becomes an inconvenience, right? Why would I get to know you when I can just swipe left and swipe right? Why would I see you as a human being? I'm coming here for my interests, right? Not only does dating apps turn you into nothing but a profile and a set of qualities, but dating apps dating apps negatively reinforce our desire for intimacy, right? Because what dating apps do is dating apps give us all of the privileges of intimacy and getting to know anybody without any of the social constraints and requirements, which then creates what? An echo chamber for us to be egocentric, where we become self-centered, where now we do not think about other people and what they want and who they are. All we think about is people relative to what they can do for us. This same dynamic also takes place on social media. Why? Because you're not developing with real human beings in the way that you would in a real life way. In real life, there are things that you would not say and you would not do. Why? Because you're in real life. However, when you're through a computer and through a screen, you feel okay and more comfortable to do things because there is no social constraint. You are just expected to, like, have self-control. And it doesn't matter how much self-control you have, when you engage in this behavior over time, it perniciously negatively affects you and leads you into a more egocentric way. Because the only thing that it gives you, yes, it gives you a false sense of security, a false sense of reality, right? And it also gives you a false sense of purpose. Why? Because just like a dating app, social media allows you to curate a world solely around what you want and what you don't want, which then makes you feel like you're the center of your own reality, which then begins to elate your view of self, right, and your self-importance. And that also what negatively impacts your interpersonal relationships. It negatively impacts your ability to be able to socialize, because now you no longer have to socialize with anybody. You no longer have to socialize with anybody. You just kind of expect relationships to kind of like come to you or whatever, because you feel like you have this false sense of security and this false sense of power. Now, the power of dating and getting to know people is just in your finger. It's no longer in your ability to have to get ready and get to know people and stuff. Moreover, the way that you would troll someone online, you would never do that in person, because you would feel socially convicted to not do that. That's the reason why when we go to a place like, for example, when we go to like the grocery store, we don't go to the grocery store and get in there and twerk and get in there and scream and get in there and yell and do all of that crazy stuff. And the reason why we don't do that is because we're able to know I'm at the grocery store, and I've been trained over time that it is inappropriate. There is a level of, because you're surrounded by other people. On social media, there is no one surrounding you. It's just you. So I wouldn't be comfortable disrespecting you, because I'm able to see the way that you react. And also, I know that I wouldn't be able to do that without a consequence, like getting touched. You get what I'm saying? I would get beat for disrespecting you in real life. But on social media, no. So again, this creates a false sense of security. Why? Because you're unmitigated, you're unchallenged, and you're not around other humans. So you dehumanize human beings, and you get desensitized to dehumanizing other people. People now become nothing more than a follow or an unfollow, right? People now become nothing more than a like or a comment. It's no longer about getting to know the person. It's about, does the person align with you or not? And I'm going to expound on that a little bit further. Now, I want to move over into my second point. My first point is that social media is extremely too intimate, right? Realistically, and I talked about this before, you shouldn't tell people things that happened with you growing up. You shouldn't tell people about, your birth chart, your big threes, that stuff that you just shouldn't share with strangers unless the social space calls for it, and unless you feel comfortable with that person. We are all too comfortable with sharing vital information with random strangers, and we don't know whether or not these people are good people or not, right? There's a thing where now people go and they're showing you, their full house layout plan. You get what I'm saying? That's inappropriate. Why are you showing me your full layout plan and you're not able to gauge? Social media is a large entity that you cannot mitigate, meaning you do not know who's watching you and you do not know who's not watching you. That is not something that you necessarily have to deal with in real life, because in real life, you do know who's watching you and you do know who's not watching you a little bit more than you would on social media. People can't necessarily ride past your house without you not knowing. Over time, you will see that truck again and again and again, or that car again and again and again and again. Whereas with social media, people can make fake pages and watch you. There is somebody watching my live right now that I've never met a day in my life, right? So we have to be mindful of cybersecurity. Now, moving forward from that point. The next thing that I want to talk about is how social media turns you into the content, right? A lot of times we say things like make content, content, make content. I've already discussed this pipeline, and I won't expound I won't expound too far into it. However, all I will say is capitalism has turned the 9-to-5 life, right, from going and clocking into the job or going and clocking into corporate America, and it went from being a 9-to-5 to now being a 25/7, where you went from working a job to becoming the product that gets worked. And we work ourselves on social media, and then we call it content, and we then call it like getting to know each other and things like that, but it's actually not any of that. It is not any of that, okay? And why is it not, okay? Let me explain. I'm sorry. Why is it not? Okay, so for example, there is no reason why you should be like, there is no reason why you should be making like vlog content, right? And vlog content that is not artistic. I could understand if you are giving me glimpses into your daily life, and then you're doing it in a cinematic way, right? And you're making it because you want to be a filmmaker or something, or you're a social media personality. But we've gotten into a place where people don't want to be into the cinematic industry, and they're not social media personalities. They are literally buying cameras, and then they're recording everything, and they say record everything because everything is content. That is not content. That is the commodification of one's life, right? Of one's soul. That is turning your everyday into intellectual property, which goes right back into the fatal flaw that I discussed. There are three spaces that we engage in. There is our at home, there is our at work or at school, and then there is some mutual social space. When you are on social media, there is no longer any of that. The job does not stop, right? You have now intertwined your social meetings and your social gatherings with work. You get what I'm saying? So now it's no longer like you're just getting on social media to just create and socialize, engage. You're actually getting on social media to now commodify, your social interactions and engagements. And we understand for the love of money is the root of all evil, right? Which now leads into the toxic pipeline of toxic productivity and all of those kind of things, where now we view our audience and we view, connection as, okay, how can I get paid? Which isn't to say that there's anything wrong with getting $1, because I definitely want a coin. No shade. If you want to send me a coin, you can. You can definitely send me a coin. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with getting money, but it's about the way in which that you're doing it, right? It's very mechanical, and it's very NPC oriented. It is not, I'm making organic, genuine content that I want to share and then get paid for my worth off of. It is, I am dehumanizing myself and turning myself into a product, and I'm selling myself to the highest bidder. You get what I'm saying? And a prime example of this is the NPC trend that happened, right? Where people, was like, yes. That was extremely inappropriate. That was a commodification where you had human beings gathering around to see you as if you were in a digital zoo. That is not okay. Another example of when we talk about people like Pinky Doll and how she, treated herself, and like a lot of that mukbang content, a lot of that stuff is inappropriate. Imagine you wake up, you're like, why is you taking a shower content? The only way that taking a shower would be content is if, you were trying to show me your body wash routine. You get what I'm saying? Or if you were trying to put me on to some products and you were getting paid for that. But I want you to act like, explain it to me, right? Yes, a digital zoo. I want you to explain it to me. Why would you wake up, you're filming yourself waking up out of bed. You're filming yourself getting dressed. Mind you, you're half naked, right? You're filming yourself putting on clothes. You're filming yourself brush your teeth. You're filming yourself make your food. You're filming yourself get ready to go to work. You're filming yourself go to work. You're filming yourself coming home from work. Then you're filming yourself going to bed, right? And that goes off into not only the commercialization of ourselves, right, and turning ourselves into a product, but that also goes into the surveillance culture, where 25/8 we have a camera watching us at all times. There is no mitigation. And the question is, how can there be a mitigation when doing so gives me a false sense of socialization, a false sense of community, right? And also, it also gives me profit. Many of us think that because we built online communities that we've actually built communities, but we haven't built online communities, right? We have only, because even when you look at socialization, let's get into that, right? What do people socialize with you? People socialize with something mutual in common. And when you're on social media, what is the thing that they mutually have in common with you? The only thing that they mutually have in common with you is whether or not you agree and believe in what they agree and believe in. And it is not that in a critical thinking way, right? Of, okay, well, I like to be around people who have the ability to think. No. I don't like people who know how to think. I like people who know what to think, right? I like people who think like me in a very unchallenged, in a very egocentric, echo chamberish type of way. And the minute that people deviate away from what we believe, this is a prime example of why social media is not a socialized space, because the minute that people deviate from what it is that we believe, we attack them and we harass them. If it was in an actual social space, you cannot do that. There is a healthy sense of disagreement. But the reason why there's not a healthy sense of disagreement on social media is because there is no middle ground, right? In a Venn diagram, you have one circle, another circle, and a circle in the middle. Think of it as there's me, there's you, and then there's what we have in the middle. In a real world way, even if me and you no longer have anything in the middle, I am still able to humanize you. When you're on social media, there is no longer a third bubble. There is only me, and there's only me. There's not even what I have in common with people. There is only who looks like me, right? So we now begin to orchestrate our algorithm in a way where it completely and directly reflects us. And we think that we've just curated our algorithm through our images, but not to our interests. But no, it's not your interest. It is an echo chamber. It is a complete and total alignment to you. Moreover, I love how you brought up we could agree to disagree in real life. But however, the thing about real life is that social media takes place where? In the ego. Social media does not take place in real life. So even to that point, in real life, there are certain things that you cannot agree to disagree with, because in real life, you are able to conceptualize the context around things. Social media is not built or designed to focus on real world context. Social media is only designed for agreement and alignment, right? In real world, I cannot tell you that the sun isn't hot. The sun is hot. But on social media, people could argue and they could be able to say, well, the sun is not hot to me. That wouldn't fly in the real world, because in the real world, people will look at you crazy like, well, it doesn't matter what you think. However, with social media, because it's so ego-based, right, it gives you this sense of power and control where when people disagree with you, you can unfollow them and then go find someone who agrees, and it creates this constant, echo chamber. It creates this constant loop of like confirmation bias and hearing people that say exactly what you want to think, and that creates this thing where you never get challenged. And because you never get challenged, you're never forced to grow. In real time and in real life, there is a level of healthy contrast that exists. There is not a level of healthy contrast that exists on social media, because social media is not actually about information. Again, in a healthy Venn diagram, there's me, there's you, and then there's what we have in common. In a like in literature, we understand that there are three perspectives, right? There's first person point of view, second person point of view, third person point of view. There is none of that in social media. There is only my point of view and anything and everything that aligns with it. In real life, right? In real life, there are some things that you cannot debate upon, right? I can't debate on whether or not Trump is a good or a bad person. That's a fact, right? I can't debate on whether or not the AI facilities that are being developed in DC are harmful to the population. And I also can't debate on whether or not the creation of those AI facilities in that DC neighborhood is a form of, environmental racial discrimination, because it 100% is, right? We're putting something so deadly and detrimental in a community of people that we do not value. You cannot debate upon that, right? The thing about social media is that social media memifies everything. And the minute where everything becomes memeified, it now loses its value. Why does it lose its value? Because people are able to move with emotion, and people are able to move with their interpretation of reality versus what something actually is. In real life, when you try to memeify or add humor to something that is very serious, people look at you and you get a healthy level of backlash. However, on social media, because there is a large vein of people that will engage in you and turning things into humor when it's not, again, you go unchecked, and you're able to always just find people in ways that you would not be able to readily find in real life. In real life, the only way that you would be able to find humor in things is if it was in an intimate group. You wouldn't go to a social group and laugh about massacre, because everybody in that group would challenge you and look at you like you're crazy, and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it but be able to sit there and take it. But that experience over time would mold you and grow you. There's none of that on social media, right? So that's a big thing. Everything is memeified. Not only is everything memeified, but social media is king and queen of disinformation, misinformation, and clickbait. On social media, everything gets snipped, cut, edited, and pasted to paint a particular narrative. And because there is a large volume of information that is being put out on the app, it is extremely hard to be able to fact check and see where did this information come from, especially when you have a large volume of people that's running with it. So because a large volume of people is running with the information, you are more likely for people to agree with it and think that it's true. When you look at a lot of arguments and a lot of conversations that happen on social media, many of times it is simply arguments of people that are taking things out of contrast, right? People are taking things out of contrast, they're taking things out of context, and they don't understand the full context of something, and they're arguing and adding context to something that does not exist. Moreover, when it comes down to social media, there are 3 levels of context that exist, right? Maybe more, but I'm just going to say these 3. There is personal, there is social, and there's professional, right? Everything is not social, which means that everything is not racism. Everything is not colorism. Some things are just jokes. Everything is not a joke. Some things are racism, right? But the thing about social media is that it blurs the lines of these things, and it makes it difficult for you to be able to understand what's just a personal joke and then what's a political, movement, right? Or what's a political issue. And everything is not that. Moreover, so in an example of what I'm talking about is how mental health has become so eroded, right? Where now everything is a product of childhood trauma. Everything is trauma. Everything is narcissism, right? When everything becomes narcissism, it creates a distortion because there's no longer a distinction between what is a clinical mental health issue and then what is a regular example of a fully functional human being. As normal, fully functional human beings, we are going to people please, right? Because people pleasing isn't a character trait, nor is it a character flaw. People pleasing is a mode of self-preservation. However, when you're on social media, you have people that are more so giving their opinions than facts, and I'm not going to delve off into that quite yet, right? So again, there is no longer a distinction, right? The mental health field has now flooded off into the social field. The mental health field is a professional field. What does it mean when something is professional, right? When something is professional, that means that it is objective. That means that it is peer-reviewed. That means that there is a certain standard, right? There is a certain rule and there's a certain guideline that all parties who engage in this thing must go in. When something is professional or right, there's a level of seriousness and a level of tact that it consists of. However, when something is social, it's more about your interpretation of the thing. When something is social, it's more about how you feel about the thing, right? And how that thing relates to you or how you are able to relate to that thing, which may or may not have anything to do with the actuality of the information. And this is where misinformation comes in, right? Or disinformation, because now you have people who are trying to educate you and who are trying to discuss professional or objective topics like politics and mental health in a very social, personal way, right? Think of this as the rise of the social media guru. Think of this as the rise of the life coach. Think of this as the pop astrologers, right? And the pop hoodoo and voodoo and witchcraft workers. And think of this as like the pop politicians. These are not people who are accredited, right? They did not go to an institution and they do not understand the actual guidelines and the foundation of the art form. They just picked up some information and then they just ran with it, and they are gravely miseducating their audience because it is now a conflation. You cannot tell what's professional now, right, from what's social. You know what I mean? You're not able to do that. Like, again, when you go to your job, at your job, there is a standard that you are supposed to meet, whether you want to meet it or not. At your job, you can't talk back to customers. You can't disrespect customers. You can't come and dress any way that you want to dress. Why? Because there is a standard that you are supposed to upkeep for overall professionalism. And the standards that our jobs set for us are able to not only recognize us, but also to keep us in recognizing that there are people that we are here to serve, and that is not just about us. It is also about what we're here to do, right? Which puts an equal focus on us and the people. There's a level of balance. But when things are social, right? When things are based on how you feel about them, and when things are based on how you relate, what's up, when things are based on how you feel about them and how you relate about them, there is no longer a standard that needs to be created. And because there is no longer a standard that needs to be created, you are now able to bend and contort and twist things so as you feel, because it's more about how I feel and how I interpret the information, and less about if the information is actually valid or not. And that is what I mean when I talk about misinformation and disinformation. Now, again, I did talk about, I talked about the commodification of ourselves on social media. I talked about how we have become a digital zoo, because it is extremely inappropriate to commercialize or to commodify your childhood trauma and your family business just to get views and just to get famous and just to get successful. Because what you're doing is you're blending two things. You're blending your very intimate and vulnerable life, and now you're turning it into something for people to consume. And because you're making it for something that people consume, that now gives people a level of entitlement and a level of demand, right? And now that is an issue, because you're now trying to balance vulnerability with feeding the people, and it's now an issue like, well, how do I do that? You know what I mean? Because people got opinions and they got a way, and then now when you don't cater to what the people want you to do, guess what? Now they snatch the support and they kind of snatch the fame away from you. So it becomes a very difficult thing, and it's like, well, which are you gonna lead with? You know what I mean? And this now has people begin to like sacrifice their authenticity and stuff. But the problem is that a lot of people are trying to be authentic on social media, and if I'm being honest with you, authenticity on social media is a fraud, right? That is not that's not appropriate. And why is it not appropriate? Because your authenticity is only owed, and it is only deserved for people that are in your intimate circle. Your authenticity is who you are. Who you are is something that only people in your personal circle deserve to have access to. Everybody does not need to give access to every aspect of you. Also, when you are operating in an authentic fashion, it is all about you, right? And constantly trying to engage in the world in an authentic way now creates a level of entitlement, because again, you're showing up in a personable and you're showing up in an intimate way, but you're moving in an intimate way in a social setting. And that's like, how do you balance that? How are you're moving and you acting like I'm your friend, or you moving and you acting like I'm your cousin, or you moving you acting like I'm your lover, but then you want me to be a stranger. So you can't make a person stay in a stranger's place but then give them boyfriend information. That causes things to get very conflated, right? And I think also too, again, it also creates an egocentric attitude, right? Because when you are authentic, you are also to a level expecting authenticity out of people, right? If I'm showing up and I'm being my real, true, and raw self, I'm expecting that. I'm probably expecting other people to do that. But also too, my authenticity, though it is real to me, it is only real to me. Nobody else gives a fuck about my authenticity, and they really do not need to, because it's only about me, right? Nobody really cares. So with that being said, I shouldn't focus on being authentic. I should focus on being, true to myself, right? But I have to also understand that the world does not revolve around me. The only time it's about me in that way is when it's in my friends, when it's about my boyfriend, and when it's about my family. When I'm in a social setting, there are only certain aspects about me that are supposed to be exposed, because it's about privacy. Everybody should not know everything about me, because when I let people in my authenticity, I now break the boundary of privacy, and I begin to behave in a very presumptuous way. The definition of presumptuous is failure to observe the limits of what is socially acceptable. If I am operating in an authentic way where I'm trying to be myself, being myself means speaking what's on my mind. Being myself means being honest about how I feel. But in a real world way, you have to understand that everything you think, feel, view, and believe does not matter all the time. There are times where it is about those things, and then there are times where it's not about those things, and you have to be able to show up and you have to be able to be cordial. But when you are someone who's self-centered and everything is all about you, guess what? The minute that people are, chastising you, and the minute that people are or the minute that you begin to get reprimanded by social standards, right? You now begin to feel like people are against you. You start taking everything personal. Why? Because you fail to realize this is a social space, not an intimate space. You taking things personal, you making things about you in a way where it's not, because you're failing to observe what's going on. The way that I would act in my bedroom, I would not act like that in my real world. In every way, I'm always 100% of myself, but I also understand that certain aspects of myself are meant for certain places and other aspects for me are not, right? I can't come around people and be talking about sucking dick. Like, that's just inappropriate. Like, what are we doing? But when you create this social media dynamic of authenticity and just being personable and just being real, it now conditions you to think, right, that being real is being crass. Being real is not being crass. Being crass is being inappropriate, and it's failure to have respect for other people, right? But again, when we're trying to be authentic and be ourselves, it now creates this level of entitlement where we begin to move in a way that we think that we should or that we think is okay, and it confuses us because we're not able to distinct what is socially acceptable. So anytime people challenge us, we just chalk it up to they hating on me, or oh, they in my way, or like, oh, they just don't like a lit bitch. No, it's not that people don't like a lit bitch. It's just that you're inappropriate. Like, this is not okay. And that's another problem with social media. It does not properly insulate you, because if anybody chastises you on social media, it's easy to just chalk it up as you a hater, or oh, you just disrespecting me, or you being rude, or da-da-da-da-da-da. But sometimes it's not really that. Sometimes people are telling you the way that you're behaving is very like inappropriate. An example of what I'm talking about is the video of the gentleman. And if you don't know, I advise that you look it up. So there was a gentleman on here a couple months ago where he was at a drive-through, and he was at the drive-through, and I think it was a McDonald's per se, and the lady handed him a drink, and the drink had, I guess to his displeasure, too much ice. So before the drink could even touch his hands, he just, shoved it away. And he was like, that's too much ice. That's too much ice. No, take it back, take it back, take it back, put it back. You get what I'm saying? And a lot of people grilled him on social media because they felt as though he was being extremely disrespectful. But that's what social media does. Social media puts you in the echo chamber so that, again, you are not able to distinguish what is socially acceptable. And you now keep moving you're now walking around with your inner dialogue exposed to everybody. This is the reason why people think that it's okay to like go out in public spaces and twerk and, shake ass and, do like that and get loud and get obscene and stuff. It's like, this is not the time and the place for that. Like, you're not supposed to be coming to a grocery store to scream and yell and cut up. And again, I'm not talking about having fun and, just those moments where you just want to be belligerent and, you just, what I mean? Like, you want to be presumptuous and brazen. No, those are like fun, relatable moments. But I'm talking about where social media now conditions you to think that behavior is acceptable and normal because you can't differentiate between what's real and what's not. Moreover, right? The thing about social media too is when you do things, you get views, clicks, and likes, and you don't realize that people aren't laughing with you, people are laughing at you, and you can mistake, right, dehumanization as validation and community. The reality of the matter is that many of us on social media do not have a community. We merely have surveillance. We have a bunch of people who are watching us, and they're waiting for us to say the next thing that is going to tick them off and make them laugh, because again, we become commercialized. Our lives, our thoughts, our actions have become content, right, for other people's delight, which again gives us this false community, this false sense of establishment where we're thinking, oh yeah, they like me, they love me, oh, they think that I'm so funny, oh my God. No, people don't really like you and really don't think that you're funny. Like, people think of you as like a sim character, or they think of you as like a character on a TV show. They don't really see you as a human being. So that again reinforces that false sense of understanding that you have moving forward. And this will go on YouTube, because bitch, I'm carrying tonight. If I ain't doing nothing, I'm carrying tonight. But y'all bear with me because this is coming straight out of my brain, straight here. So this isn't as necessarily as put together as I would like for it to be. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about how social media is not objective, okay? And I touched on that a little bit, but I want to talk about how not only is social media king queen of like clickbait, and not only is social media king queen, but it's also king queen of rage bait, right? So the thing about it is that everything on social media is designed to get you to buy, is designed to get you to sell, it is designed to get you to do a particular thing, and therefore therefore the validity of the information is now to a degree compromised, because people don't get on social media with the intention of just sharing an idea. Now everybody has to market themselves in a way to get ahead of you. And the thing about it is, when things get so caught up in marketing, it becomes more subjective than it does objective, right? It becomes more about getting in front of, getting attention, right? And getting eyes. A lot of people on social media are concerned about getting people to watch them instead of having something worth viewing, right? So when that happens, the quality and the validity of information is sometimes lost. A lot of times, again, like I stated before, people are not explaining ideas in an objective way. They are explaining ideas in a way that is designed to trigger emotions and feelings out of you. Because why? They're just interested in being catapulted in the algorithm, right? So you see a lot of like offensive spiritualists who make negative content and negative videos about Christians or Christianity, because they know that that's going to get views and sales. You see a lot of people who try to rage bait gender disparities and gender issues, where they'll go live and they'll make the headline, black women are the issue, or here's why black men are no good. You know what I mean? Like things like that. And it's, because everything is so triggering, you got to think about it. Every time you watch a video and every time you learn something, 9 times out of 10, it's doing so in a very triggering fashion. And because of that, it becomes more about antics than it does actual education. So you may not actually even learn what you were supposed to learn. You just more so got your ego stroked, or you got your ego knocked down. You either leave a video feeling ashamed about the information, which then distorts the way that you interpret and learn it, or you now learn the information in a way that makes you feel superior. So yet again, it's giving you a false sense of security and a false sense of value and worth, right? Where we say things like black women are goddesses, black women are the divine femmes, black women are like, black women are the, center of creation, and all of these other kind of things. It's not necessarily that these are bad statements, but when these statements are not put into proper context, it can create an ego effect, right? It can elate the ego of people. When you say things like, black men are the leaders and black men, all of that garbage, it's not actually educating and bringing the community or that particular community up. It's just feeding their ego and giving them a false sense of entitlement without having to do any of the work. And that's the thing that ego does, right? Ego has you crying over a closed door that has absolutely nothing behind it. Moreover, ego has you moving as though you are in your harvest when you haven't even sowed a seed. Let me say that again. Ego will have you moving like you in your harvest when you haven't even sowed a seed. So essentially, it got you moving, right, with a sum but no equation. You moving with 4, but you don't have 2 plus 2. You get what I'm saying? And you ain't even got 4 plus 1. The equation don't add up, right? So, you know what I mean? But this is what it does, right? The commercialization of spirituality. Spirituality is more about demonizing. Sometimes spirituality is more about demonizing Christianity. Spirituality is more about inflating the egos of its participants, or spirituality is about creating this false sense of reality, right? By telling people you can manifest your own reality. You don't have to go to work. All you got to do is speak something into existence. I saw a video of a young woman say things like, oh, well, logic doesn't really exist. Logic doesn't matter. I remember seeing a video of Gary Vee where Gary Vee had said, oh, well, you don't really got to go to college. Fuck college, right? All of these things is subjective, and it's people in their ego trying to interpret and explain the world from you, not from fact, right? Not from evidence. And this is the reason why professional institutions exist. Professional institutions where we have to speak with fact, where we have to cite sources, where we have to conduct sources, and we have to also go through peer review. There is no mitigation. The only thing that mitigates, and the only accredited institution that people go to on social media is their ego. Their egos give them the credentials to feel like they have the authority to speak on certain things and speak about certain things with this level of something that they do not. You get what I'm saying? So again, and it leads to distortion. So you'll have people like saying things, and when you kind of like go and you kind of like go back and you look at it, like for example, like that Gary Vee video, and that Gary Vee video of saying something like, okay, well, you know, as black, you know, you don't got to go to school, you don't go to school. That would be crazy to say, given the fact that black people are, you know, discriminated against when it comes down to education, right? There is already so much of an attempt to keep black children out of the schools. Moreover, what we have to understand is that people who are influencers and people who are, you know, in these positions, essentially they are role models. And I hate to say it, right? But essentially they are when you brandish yourself an influencer. Today, you're able to be an influencer or a celebrity without having to do any of the work. And because you sit at this high pinnacle in society, you are now able to give the children a distorted reality of a distorted understanding of reality, because they're not seeing the real world. They're only seeing the world through your lens, which reinforces them. We have to understand that many of us use social media for a sense of representation, for a sense of community, and for a sense of establishment of what the world really is, right? So if I'm getting on social media and my favorite influencer is telling me, oh my God, you don't go to school, look at me, I didn't go to school and I made it, that's giving me a false sense of security that I do not realize, right? Which goes back into the capitalization or like the greed effect that social media has become. A lot of people, by way of following, let me recite this quote for you again. So this quote says, this quote says the following, right? A fly that has no one to advise it follows the corpse into the grave. And what I'm saying by that is, right, when you don't have wise counsel, you are no longer able to actually sit and challenge the information that you get. So you get a bunch of information and you don't know if it's subjective or if it's objective, because a lot of times when people are speaking from their ego, they're speaking of their lived experiences and they're trying to call it their opinion, and they're trying to, you know what I mean, frame it as something that is not. And again, it throws everything off. And that's another reason of why I do not think that social media is a healthy medium for actual, you know, educational content. And I think, you know, and not only do I think that social media isn't a healthy medium for educational content, which isn't to say that you can't learn anything on social media, because you can. However, what I'm saying is social media in and of itself is not an appropriate replacement for going to like an actual accredited institution. And the reason being behind that is because there is too much, you know, there's too much bias, right? There is too much bias, and it is a completely and totally unmitigated market. Not only do I think that social media isn't a healthy replacement for going to school or just going to like actual accredited institutions and going to actual professionals, right? But I also think that, again, as I stated before, social media gives you a false sense of security in terms of community. When you look at something like, okay, narcissism, right? The way that people talk about narcissism lets you know that they actually, number one, they do not know what narcissism is, right? And number two, right, they are speaking more from their ego than they are from objectivity. I had somebody come in my live one time and they asked me, in your personal opinion, what is ego? There is no such thing, or not ego, what is narcissism? There is no personal opinion about what narcissism is. There is a clinical definition of what narcissism is. But when you get on social media, you have people that are able to tell you that narcissism is demonic, and narcissism is a demon, and narcissism is a spirit, and narcissism is a result of karma. And all of that is hogwash. That's hogwash. Right? That line of thinking is no different than when, you know, church mothers used to lay hands on autistic children and they used to say, oh, we gonna pray the autism away. Or like, oh, we gonna pray the autism away. Or we gonna pray the depression away. And you prayed and you prayed and you prayed, but you were still, you were still depressed, right? I am not trying to negate the validity or the power of religion and spiritual organizations. However, to place spiritual organizations and religious institutions on the same playing field as actual scientists, I take a little bit of concern in that. I don't think that that's a healthy thing to do, right? Because that opens up the room for what? That opens up the room for spiritual psychosis and religious psychosis, which is the reason why you see a lot of people falling into cults. You see a lot of people falling into psychosis. You see a lot of people losing their mind because, yet again, they are flies following corpses into the grave. And the reason why is because they do not have any wise counsel that is able to tell them, hey, that's a corpse you following. So we don't even know that we following people that's in psychosis because they telling us and saying things to us that make us feel good. Things have to be put into a proper context. Not only do things have to be put in a proper context, but things also have to be challenged. We cannot listen to ideas without challenging them. Otherwise, it will give us a false context of how those things exist. Going back to the example of narcissism. Narcissism is a clinical issue. Narcissism is not the equivalent of self-centeredness or selfishness. When a lot of people are talking about narcissism, they're talking about it in the context of character trait, right? In the context of behavior, right? Like, oh, you self-centered, you selfish, you don't care about nobody else. That is more human. Narcissism is a personality disorder. It is literally called narcissistic personality disorder, meaning it is a clinical issue. It is not something that you can just pray away. It is not something you can discipline away. It is a clinical issue that has to be recognized as such. However, if you are on social media and everybody is talking to you about narcissism as though it was a clinical, as if it was just nothing more than a character trait thing, then you won't be able to recognize that. So then you'll have this false understanding and you'll be moving around and you'll be thinking, oh yeah, like, okay, you know, narcissism, it just means you a bad person. You a bad person. And we'll label everything narcissist. For example, right? There is a difference between angry and furious. What's the distinction, right? The expression of the anger and the magnitude of the anger. There is a key distinction. There is a distinction between being sad, being depressed, and being melancholy. Those are all different things, okay? Right? There is a big difference between being happy, being ecstatic, and being joyous. Those are completely different things. Those are not the same thing. They are all similar ideas, right? They're all in the similar family tree, but they're not the same thing. Narcissism is nowhere near the same family tree as being selfish or self-centered. They are not in the same family tree. Those are different things, right? Also too, correlation does not mean causation. Just because something correlates doesn't mean that it aligns with an idea, right? You can be narcissistic and bear certain character traits, and that, you get what I'm saying? So it, again, ultimately, it just blurs the line, right? The thing about social media when it comes down to mental health is that social media does not care about mental health. And I can tell you that social media doesn't care about mental health because you can see the way that we talk about narcissists. If we really cared about mental health, we would acknowledge narcissism as the disorder and the disability that it is. And we would treat those people with a level of respect. Moreover, social media only gives you people's thoughts and people's ideas, but it doesn't give you the context. Because it doesn't give you the context, you cannot conceptualize. So therefore, you don't understand the emotional implication or the emotional depth and weight that something carries, right? Which goes back into being tone deaf. Social media creates a tone deaf environment. When there is no context, right? When there is no tone, when there is no description and no conceptualization, it leaves it what? Up to the interpretation of the listener, which reinforces what? Ego, which then becomes what? Egocentric bias, which is essentially where we begin to interpret the world solely based on our interpretation of it. We're not interpreting the world subjectively and objectively. We're only interpreting the world based on what we feel, what we think, and how we view it, right? And that's based only on our experiences. And you understand the world solely by your experiences, especially if you do not have the skills to be able to interpret what you experience. Just because I grew up in a world that treated me a certain way, that does not mean that I have the mental capacity to appropriately conceptualize what I experience. Many people may rebuke me in this statement, but allow me to explain. If I grew up in an abusive relationship and I now consider abuse to be love, does that mean that I knew what I went through? Does that mean that I was able to appropriately conceptualize what I went through? No. I had an experience, but I didn't understand and interpret the experience appropriately. So that means now I am reinforcing, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of trauma, because I went through abuse, and where I come from, abuse meant love. So now I think abuse means love, but it does not, right? So because all of this context and stuff is lacking, this also creates an issue in literacy, right? Because literacy is about first person, second person, third person. Literacy is about main ideas, supporting details, and theme. All of these things get lost, and it's only about how you can relate and how you can understand information, which again fuels egocentric bias. I would also argue, going a little bit further, using another example of this, when you look at social issues that happen, you can tell that social media is a pseudo example of community, because if we really value community as much as we did on social media, we wouldn't be where we are, right, as a community. Like, just being honest, we wouldn't be where we are politically. People think that getting on social media and talking about political topics makes you an activist or a humanitarian, and it does not. Because if your activism does not expand outside of social media, it is nothing more than ego or a mere trend. That does not make you an activist. Again, ego, right? Ego gives you the result without the work. Ego will have you feeling like you a boss when you haven't even deserved or earned the right to be a boss. That's why ego is called, right, the over evaluation or the overestimation of one's abilities, one's worth, and one's social status. You are considering yourself to be something and someone that you do not have the skills for. So a lot of people think that they are humanitarians and influencers and artists and all of these things, but they've actually done nothing to be put in these boxes. And the thing is, when you now allow people to be whatever they want to be without any type of mitigation, it now begins to devalue the art form, because now I can call myself an artist and not actually have to respect art, right? I can now call myself anything and be anything without actually having to show up in that way. I can call myself a humanitarian and do nothing for the people but make rage bait videos and then get paid and then run off and say, oh my God, I'm a humanitarian. That is delusion. That is delusion, right? When you look at something like, and I hate to use this lady's example, but I'm gonna bring her up. I remember a video where a king got up here and told darker skin tone girls that they would never reach her level of success. And to this day, a king still has a platform and she's still successful. If social media was about reality and it wasn't just about ego, that wouldn't have existed. Nobody actually cared about Ekane being colorist. They just wanted the morals. They just wanted moral superiority. You get what I'm saying? They wanted moral superiority and they wanted moral outrage. They just wanted to profess and be able to express what they like and what they don't like. And all of that is entitlement, right? Entitlement is thinking that you are able to operate or thinking that you deserve treatment that you do not, right? That infringes upon guidelines, boundaries, all of those things. So you got people that think that it's okay to get on social media and be critical of others and talk about people's bodies and people's parenting and, you know, and people's children and all of those things, but that's not real, right? And I want to expound on that. Recently, people was talking about Cardi B, and they were saying that Cardi B is a bad mother. Anybody that gives their opinion on Cardi B's mothership is in their ego. And I'm saying this humorously, I'm not saying this literally, but anybody that has an opinion on that woman's mothering should be whipped in the streets. I'm saying it as a joke, I'm not saying that literally, but should be whipped in the streets. Because why are you talking about another woman's parenting, right? Because think about it, if you genuinely cared about this woman's parenting, you would probably call CPS, right? You would probably get involved. You would probably DM her. You would probably check on her, ask her, hey, are you okay? You would move like an actual community. Saying, right, because this is moral superiority, right, all of this bullshit. And moral superiority is essentially where you attack people for committing the sins that you don't. That's all. Because if you really cared about the children, then you would actually take action to ensure the well-being of the children. Sitting on social media and going in your bedroom or going, you know, or in your front seat of your car or getting on the side of the road and talking about how bad you think somebody's parenting is, but doing nothing for the children, what did you actually do? All you did was give your ego an audience. That's all you did. All you did was allow people to know how you don't think about what you think about this person and what you feel about this person. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have opinions and we shouldn't be okay to express our opinions. We should. But in real life, there is a context for what is an opinion and what is simply just disrespect, right? You're not allowed, and you don't have the authority to be able to speak on people as you please. That's where entitlement comes from. And entitlement is an effect of a cause, and the cause being ego, right? When you egocentric, when you elated yourself beyond who you really are, you shouldn't be able to get up and just talk about people. I remember seeing a video where somebody was talking about a Kane's parenting, right? But yet again, if you really cared about a mother's parenting, why wouldn't you DM that mom? Why wouldn't you call CPS, right? Why wouldn't you move like a community in a unit if you felt like that person was really going through something? If you feel as though a mother is potentially a detriment to her children, explain how putting that mother on blast for thousands of people to see is genuine. That's not genuine. That's rooted in your ego. I don't give a fuck if the content of what you were saying was valid. The context around it is not. You could have a good idea, but your execution is always going to show where your heart is. Because if I'm as a real bitch, real bitches do real things. No real bitch get on social media to talk about a mama. Because when you really care about kids, you go call up CPS. You don't sit over here and gather. If I really care about the kids, why would I be on the phone all day? Oh my God, I'm scared for the kids. I'm worried for the kids. I'm worried for the kids. I'm worried for the kids. You don't really care about the kids. This is just another moment for you to have internet fodder. This is another moment for you to converse. This is another moment for you to give your opinion on things, which all gives you a false sense of entitlement. It gives you a false sense of security. It gives you a false sense of worth, right? It puts you in your ego, because now you got people that's telling you, oh, you was right. Oh my God, you was right. You was right. You gave your opinion. Oh my God, you was so real. You was so real. You was so real. Thinking about Crystal, right? On the read, when Crystal was tearing into Cardi B and was saying, oh Cardi, you just getting ready to pray that you not going down that operating table like all them other women who did when they got mommy makeovers. That was disgusting. A lot of people was trying to defend that, and that also proves my point of how lost the people are, because they in their ego too. We done got in our ego, and we so used to trying to defend our points. We so used to defending where we're right that we're not even able to understand where we're wrong. There is no way. I don't give a fuck if you was a therapist. I don't give a fuck if you was a president. I don't give a fuck who you were, who you were, or what type of platform you have. I don't give a fuck that you're a social media commentator. I don't give a fuck that you're a celebrity. It does not matter. You do not have the right to talk to a mother that way and to speak to somebody that way on a public platform. It is disgusting. It is egregious. It is inappropriate. That's not okay. And the thing is, we done got so used to, number one, being our ego, because our ego make us think like, oh, well, this is my opinion. Well, these are my feelings. These is my thoughts. These are your thoughts and your opinions on another person. That's how you and your ego, you don't even care that you harming other people with your words, because you don't care about the impact of your words. You ain't got no empathy. Why do you need empathy? When you create an echo chamber, right? And the echo chamber that social media creates disconnects empathy, and the less disconnected we come from empathy, the more ego based we become. And if people ain't moving from their ego, then they moving to appease their audience, right? Social media done got us into a point where we think that, barbaric display is comedy and entertainment, and it's not. It's barbaric. It's barbaric, it's egregious, and it's crass. It's filthy. It's not a good look. It's disgusting. No, it's not. It's not hot. Moving on. I'm not done. I am so on a roll. How long I've been live? I've been live for an hour and 20 minutes. I have more. Let's continue. Okay, so let me get to my next notes. So the last thing that I want to talk about here before I shift gears is I want to talk about how when being on social media, the problem with social media is that, yet again, there is not enough neutral ground, right? There is no neutral ground that also acts as like, a mutual connection. On social media, people do not recognize you as a human being who has thoughts, emotions, and feelings, which means that they don't conceptualize you fully and wholly. People on social media only see you as thoughts and feelings or views. And those thoughts and feelings and views on whether they align with them or not. If you align, they love you. If you don't, they hate you, right? So therefore, people will disagree with you on social media and they will challenge you more from a I don't agree, and more from a I don't resonate, and more from a I don't really think that way, and less from a valid disagreements, right? Because when you validly disagree with someone, that means that you are able to see a fault in how they think. A lot of times the disagreements that happen from social media do not happen because we disagree with the idea. We disagree with the fact that people are dissenting from our world image, because we are so used to following and connecting with people that are a direct mirror of us. So the minute that you do something outside of what I think is okay and socially acceptable for you, I get uneasy, and now I start to insert my opinions. Again, you shouldn't feel and think and have an opinion on certain stuff. It just shouldn't be an opinion and a thought. Like, you don't have the grounds to like feel and think certain stuff. Certain stuff is just inappropriate because you wouldn't do that in real life. Like, what are we talking about here? So again, the fact that on social media, it is not two people that are connecting with each other. It is a person that is in their bedroom, that is from their worldview, that is in an intimate setting, that is using social media, and they are using social media solely for what aligns for them and what doesn't. And therefore, there is a level of short-sightedness or a failure to actually conceptualize the party on the other side of the screen. And if it doesn't come from the viewer, then it comes from the person who is orchestrating and creating the content. Because a lot of times people don't create content in a fully conceptualized way. They just create content that is heavily based on their interpretation, their feelings, their thoughts. And it's nothing wrong with that kind of stuff when it is conceptualized in that way. But the thing about social media now, and the thing about people, is we hold our opinions to the same standard as a fact, and it's not, right? We hold interpretation to the same way that we hold truth, and it's not. An opinion is not a fact. And it's not to say that an opinion is more than a fact or a fact is more than an opinion, but the simple matter of the fact is you cannot have an opinion when there is a fact that disproves it. And when you have an opinion, you have to conceptualize where an opinion belongs. Because an opinion does not belong in certain conversations and in certain places. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I can't get over here and tell you I don't think that the sky is real when we having a scientific conversation. Now, if we having like one of those high conversations, bitch, where we like, I wonder when you kill a roach, does the mama stay up home waiting for the roach to come back? You get what I'm saying? That exists in a particular context, but there's no level, there's not enough context, right? So again, it's just an immediate, do you reflect what I think or do you not? If you don't reflect what I think, I'm going to unfollow you, I'm going to argue with you, I'm going to challenge you, and I'm not challenging you because I actually disagree with the thought and the idea. I'm challenging you because you don't agree or you don't align with what I think you should be. And it's less about trying to gain an understanding, right? And it's less about building a relationship, and it's more about enmeshment. Social media creates enmeshment, and that enmeshment can either lead to codependency, right, or otherwise considered a parasocial relationship, or it can lead to self-centeredness, right, and selfishness, where we only see people as views and clicks and items to be used, right? I think also, right, a lot of times when we do agree and when we do align with people, right, we often align with people that are where we are, not where we need to be. We're not aligning and connecting with people that are actually teaching and educating us. We are like, listen, there is a wise quote that says, do not take a shirt from a shirtless person, right? Which means, how can I give you something that I do not have for myself? How can I give you advice on something that I have not learned for myself? You get what I'm saying? How can I lead you through something I have not led myself through? If I am being honest with you, on social media, the biggest problem in our dynamic now, right, is a lot of us are too egocentric. We think we know everything. We are so caught up in our worldview, and we are unwilling to humble ourselves and step outside of what we know or what we do not know, right? And social media reinforces this. We don't want to socialize. We don't want to go connect to third party spaces. We see everything as an inconvenience that is just natural human interaction and respect, right? We're low in empathy, right? And we are high in individualism, right? We are high and we have everything that reinforces our social isolation. Social media is a tool for social, emotional, and intellectual isolation because it keeps you only where you want to be and it doesn't challenge you enough to get outside. Moreover, not only on your half are you not challenging yourself, but a lot of the content that's put on this app, period, is not concise and sound enough to even do that. A lot of the content that's put on this app is so embedded with opinion and is so embedded with bias that it is hard for you to even dissect what's biased and what's not, right? So again, when you are agreeing with someone, you're not agreeing with the fact that, okay, this person was critically thinking and then I was critically thinking and then we came to the same understanding, or like, oh, okay, we share this thing in common. It's more so of I see myself in you. And that's very, 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 very dangerous, because when you focus on building relationships about people who you see yourself in, you're not seeing them as an individual with a soul identity, which means that you're not able to conceptualize a world outside of your ego, which is nothing more than your sense of reality and your sense of self, which ultimately means you are not able to depersonalize things. You are not able to understand that there is a personal reality for you, there's a personal reality for somebody else, and then there's a real reality, which means first person, second person, third person, which puts things into context. Third person is where a lot of times objectivity lie. Second person is one half of the truth and first person is another half of the truth, right? Because the thing about perspective is that perspective is distorted. I can see everything except for me. To me, it's a 6, to you, it's a 9. But if I was to step out of my perspective, I would be able to understand, oh, I see a 6 and you see a 9. Instead, it's just 6, 6, 6, 9, 9, 9. No, it's a 9. No, it's a 6. But nobody is meeting any mutual ground. And that's what I'm saying. Social media doesn't offer a mutual ground. It's too extreme. Either you believe in me or you don't. And moreover, when you kind of like challenge people on certain ideas, I guess, I think that sometimes there's not, enough like building around ideas, right? So when you disagree with somebody, either you take it personal, right? Or they take it personal, which then stops you from being able to learn and grow. And that's the reason why social media isn't really about building intellect and understanding ideas. Social media is only about ego. It's about finding people who believe and think how you think and how you feel. That's all it's about. It's just an echo chamber. It's just another way for us to develop enmeshment and codependency, right? I'm not saying that social media is used exclusively for this, but I'm saying that if you are not aware of these things, you will fall into this category. So that's what I have to say on that. And that is the first half of the live for tonight. Now, I kind of want to take a breather. I want to introduce another African proverb. And I also want to, does anybody, and I also want to ask a question, but before I ask that question, any thoughts that we want to add clarity on, any opinions, any feelings, any thoughts, like what's the tea? Like, if you got anything you want me to get on a little bit more, let me know before I move forward. So I want to get into this African proverb. All right. So this African proverb says, the tree you neglect today can grow to produce the rope which will be used to tie you. This proverb means that an issue you refuse to address or a problem you neglect can grow into a disaster that destroys you. It warns that ignoring red flags and refusing to face uncomfortable truths today can lead to misery later on. And I'm saying that to anybody that's going to listen to this live and go into cognitive dissonance and pretend like they didn't hear any of the things that I just said. So I just want to say that. Now, before I get off into the second half that correlates more to this African proverb, I want to answer any questions and read any comments. So Zay said, we put them on a pedestal, so this doesn't apply to them. Social media influencers, personalities, and influencers are placed on a pedestal by human beings. But as I was saying earlier, they also play into that. And the reason being is because, to a certain degree, I think some influencers, personalities, and celebrities share too much. They share too much of their personal life in a way that is not appropriate. And they contribute to the parasocial relationship, right? I think that, who do I think does it more? I think human beings do it more, because we see celebrities not as humans, but as products to be commercialized. And what capitalism is based on, capitalism is based on exploitation, right? You're either exploiting yourself or you're exploiting your audience, right? So a lot of celebrities, they exploit their audience because they over market themselves as relatable, right? They market themselves in a way where you develop a parasocial relationship, because the reality of the matter is, without the parasocial relationship, you wouldn't be as inclined to buy and shop and produce. You get what I'm saying? Who's willing to sell? Exactly. So the thing about it is like, that's what, like, you have to think, in order for me to, who's the best audience to get money from? People that's in their ego, right? People that's in survival mode. You know what I mean? People that, like, the best way to get a person to do something is to make them think that it's an original idea of their own. So a lot of marketing weakens the intellectual state of a person to make them exploitable, right? Like, a person who's exploiting you, they're not educating you, they're rage baiting you. That's what I was saying with social media. That's why I was saying that social media isn't a good tool for community, and it's not also a good tool for, like, learning, because the people that's getting up here and teaching you, they only teaching you because they have a motive and an agenda that you're not able to actually recognize. So everything that they say, they're construing information in a way that pushes propaganda or gets you to think in a certain way to then do what they want you to do. Everything is like manipulation. And I think that it's a little bit too manipulative for you to solely trust. And I've seen this with a lot of people who do, like, spiritual content. They market themselves as a spiritualist, but really they just want to get a bag, right? So they're taking advantage. Think of it like prosperity gospel. That's what it's like. So again, a lot of, like, celebrities, you know, they bank on trying to be really, really, really relatable and, you know, really, really, really personal, and you know, like they kind of like pander to their audience in a way. And I think, I don't know, I think that there needs to be a certain level of reprimand on that. But I think we as the audience fall a little bit more into that than the celebrities do, if I'll say that. Also, my thing is, like I was saying before, if you are a celebrity, right, and you are telling people about your children, right, you're showing people your kids, you're inviting people into your marriage, you are inviting people into too much of your personal life. And your personal life is either real, which means that you're going to take the critiques personal, or your personal life is fabricated, which means you're here to push an agenda. Either way, there is some type of consequence that's going to happen. You get what I'm saying? So I think it's hard to, like, walk that line, and you got to be mindful and you got to be conscious. And I don't think a lot of, like, celebs, you know, I don't think a lot of them do it appropriately. At least some are artists. Like Cardi says, it's straight up, and everyone still feeds into it. But I think somebody like Cardi is a prime example of that, right? Cardi is an example of someone who is too intimate. You know what I mean? Like, she overshares. She shares too much of her life. It's not appropriate how much she shares, and then she gets mad when, you know, because you got to think about it. The folly of intimacy on the internet is that everybody isn't your friend, right? So all of her videos and the lives that she's did, people record them, weaponize them, and use them against her. There's a reason why celebrity, like, why your fan, like, think about Beyonce. Beyonce is a prime example of sharing just enough. You only know about her what she wants you to know, and you can only access it at a particular time and way. I think she does it very, very, very well. Now, some could argue that she exploits her audience instead of exploiting herself for her audience, but I don't know. I guess that's up for a whole nother debate. But I like the way how she's just an artist. You only know Beyonce. You don't know Beyonce Giselle knows Carter. You don't really know anything about her children and her family and her kids. And if you do learn any of those things, you only learn it in art or through, an interview. You're not able to have 25/8 constant access. So I think that plays, a role and a part in it. But I think that this is a very, nuanced thing. It's not to say that you can't be intimate and you can't share yourself and your life. And it's also not to say that we can't, as like a fans and as an audience, desire to have a level of intimacy with the people that we watch and subscribe to. But it's just about respect. I think the respect factor is the lost thing there. Like, not able to gauge what is appropriate. There are some things that are just inappropriate. But we have to also keep in mind too, I think what makes social media such a dangerous thing is influencers and podcast, not even influencers, but I would say YouTubers and podcasters, because YouTubers and podcasters played into that dynamic. YouTubers and podcasters play into the dynamic of the dehumanization of celebrities, and also like TV show hosts and all of those people like Wendy Williams, those like radio show hosts, they all play into the dehumanization of celebrities, and they also play into celebrities developing parasocial relationships, because places like TMZ are leaking news and information that nobody should know. People like the Shade Room, they dehumanize celebs, and they also feed into the ego, right, of their audience. Right? When you look at, like, for example, when you, like, if you remember the show that like T.S. Madison has, T.S. Madison and Kaya used to do a show called Queen's Court, right? Where Kaya was talking about, Trina's womb. That's inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, where, T.S. Madison was calling Wendy Williams Wendell. You know what I mean? Wendell Bartholomew, Orenthal, Clyde, Davis, Hezekiah, and the Three Peaches. You know what I mean? Like, in a lot of times we think that stuff is just entertainment and it's just funny, but it's humor at the expense of the celebs and stuff. So I don't think that you can't be on social media and have these spaces, but I think that the guidelines is just not mitigated enough. And that's why I use the example of like a dating app. You get what I'm saying? That shit was funny, no shade. I mean, yeah, it was funny, but it was highly inappropriate. And I think the older you get, the more you start to realize, like, okay, this really isn't okay. Because the matter of the fact is, like, you wouldn't want somebody to do that to you. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't want somebody to get on a radio show or a talk show and dig into your personal business and talk about your marriage and talk about your foreclosures and talk about your business. You wouldn't want somebody to do that. So, like, now that I look at that stuff, it's like, this isn't okay. Like, this is actually really, really, like, this is nasty. You know what I mean? There's not enough integrity involved in these things. That's what I would argue. But moving on. So the thing that I talked about, I used this quote, there's limits. The Kaya always took it too far, along with others like Tasha K and other YouTube bloggers. Yeah, because all they care about is exploiting others and themselves for views and clicks. You know what I mean? And moreover, as I stated before, a lot of this social media stuff does a detriment to the community, because it now creates a monkey see, monkey do effect, right? Where if I can get on social media and I can see somebody like T.S. Madison, Kaya, or Tasha K, or if I can see like somebody like Ekane, or just, other social media figures, like, think about it. If Raymonte can go and beat up somebody for making a negative comment on Stan Twitter and then go and get a deal with Chipotle, that makes me think and feel like, oh, okay, I can go beat bitches up and still go on to be an amazing celebrity and all this other kind of stuff, right? It begins to dissolve social etiquette, you know what I mean, and a social norm, whereas like anything can go. Like, I can say anything, I can do anything, and I'll be okay. Like, just because I say negative, crazy things on social media that my audience is okay with, I'm okay and I'm celebrated and I'm like protected, right? But the thing about it is like, the audience doesn't validate what you do. They justify it. The minute that it becomes unjustifiable by their self-righteous standards, they will kick you to the curb. You get what I'm saying? They will kick you to the curb. Like, you know what I mean? Again, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. So Because you got to think about it. Anybody that's okay with you dehumanizing other people, they can't be a good person, right? Like they can't be a good judgment of character. They can't, right? Like they just cannot. If I'm okay with watching and engaging and supporting the dehumanization of somebody else, I got to be in my ego. I can't have too much empathy. I can't be thinking about how that impacts somebody else. And that long-term effect, it desensitizes you. So that's why my statement is social media perniciously leads to us becoming more egocentric. It leads to us becoming more egocentric because it doesn't give us healthy contrast. It doesn't allow us to properly conceptualize ideas. It reinforces our bias, creating an echo chamber, which also impacts our empathy levels, right? And our ability to understand people, places, and things outside of ourselves, which then results in us becoming intellectually, socially, and emotionally isolated, right? Which then heightens hyper individuality, right? Which obviously leads to ego, right? And arrogance. So that is my claim. Those are my reasons, and that's what I have. Now we finna move on to the second portion of this live. So the question that I have for everybody really is, how do you use social media? And this isn't something that you have to answer. I just want this to be something that you kind of like self-reflect and maybe journal about. My question for you is, how do you use social media? And do you plan on using and engaging with social media in a new way? I would just like for us to start becoming mindful of how we use the app and what type of impact and what effect the app has on us. Again, you don't got to really answer that question. That's just a rhetorical question. So I remember, to answer myself, I remember when I was, I remember it was like 2022, I think, 2022 or 2021. And I remember for the entire month of September, I took a social media break and I did not get on TikTok. And I remember when I got off of TikTok, I felt so grounded. I felt grounded. I could hear my thoughts better. I felt more safe and more secure and more established. And then when I got back on social media, I felt really like dysregulated. You get what I'm saying? And the reason why is because, again, when you get on social media, you seeing somebody die, right? Then immediately after seeing somebody die, then you're seeing somebody laughing, right? Then you seeing a heavy educational video. Then you seeing another superficial video. Then you seeing a controversial topic. Then you seeing a messy topic. Like, over time, it desensitizes you and it just wears down your emotional capacity, because you can't hold space and dedicate the necessary energy and emotion to all of those things. Like, you flipping through emotions in all 5 minutes. You get what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So there's that. Also, too, I think social media negatively impacted my mental health, because it really, to a certain degree, it messed, I would say, like, with my ego, right? With my sense of self and my sense of reality and just like my establishment. And the reason being was because of the rage baity videos. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of like the rage bait content. Over time, constantly listening or engaging with content that rage baits you, or that shames you, or that criticizes you, or even content that takes you on an emotional roller coaster, right? It can create what is it called? I think it's called like intermittent. I can't remember. I cannot remember. But it's sort of, I don't know, it's sort of akin to like an unhealthy relationship, right? Because you're being pulled up and down, 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 up and down. And the thing is that the videos are not conceptualized. So therefore, it gives room for you to kind of take things personal in a way that it isn't, right? And it's not necessarily just me taking things personal, but it's the way that a video is designed, right? Like, people will make a video and they'll say things like, what they'll say, if you're a people pleaser, you are a terrible person. Like, if you a people pleaser, you got low self-esteem and you just ain't nobody, right? So now if I'm people pleasing, it's making me think, damn, I got low self-esteem. You know what I mean? Like, okay, now you feel hit. Now you questioning yourself and you kind of in an introspective place. You may be resistant to that information. You may take that information real, like, but then you're going to have to kind of like maybe sit and reflect, because the thing about it is like, you're not really listening to a person teach you or educate you. You're just listening to a person take general terms and then conceptualize them in their own way, right? So you're not getting what the thing actually is. You're getting what the thing is interpreted as by the person. And over time, that can distort your actual sense of self and your actual sense of reality, because you can begin to think things are something that they're not. Because what you have to understand what social media is designed to do. Social media is designed to get you to move, right? Clickbait. What is clickbait? Clickbait is designed to get you to make an action. Rage bait is designed to do what? So when you really look at social media, it is extremely and highly manipulative, right? Manipulative. It hijacks your nervous system. It hijacks your dopamine levels. It hijacks your emotions and it pulls you in. And even if you're not emotional in the beginning, prolonged exposure to that kind of content is just, and it's not conceptualized properly, it can lead you to becoming dysregulated and ungrounded, right? Imagine you see a video and the video tells you, if you obese, you don't have no discipline and no self-respect for yourself. You need to apply yourself harder. You get what I'm saying? And it's like, it's not put in a proper context. Because here's the thing, right? When you're having a conversation with a person, everything is put in a particular context, and there's not really enough room for you to take certain stuff personal. Now, I'm not talking about a well-formulated video, right, where you take it personal. I'm talking about a video that is designed. And again, when people are making videos on social media, they're not just human beings that are just getting online. They are human beings that are like sharing their thoughts, or they're human beings that are marketing themselves up a certain type of way. And I don't know, like, I remember seeing this video, right, where this gentleman, he would make videos like political or like socioeconomic videos, but he had a bias towards black men. He hated black men. So now everything that he's saying is biased. And he's not saying, hey, I have this bias towards black men, because he's not aware of it. So now he's giving you this information in a way where if you're not aware, it is going to cause you to start hating black men or viewing them in a weird way. So that's what I'm saying. Social media isn't conceptualized enough. It doesn't allow you to understand where things actually belong and gauge things. I think unless you're critically thinking, you got to take time to ask yourself, is this an opinion? Is this a fact? Like, you know what I mean? Where does this belong? Because you just seeing general ideas. No main idea, no supporting details, no theme, nothing. It's not like a intro, introduction, thesis statement, support, you know what I mean? Like, no, it's not a fully fleshed out thought. Everything is bits and pieces and fragments. So I don't know, it's like, it's too much. And then also too, based on where you at on social media, people debate on things that are not really like debatable. And it's like, again, if you listen to that shit, it'll have you thinking some shit that ain't even true. Like, a bitch will get in your face and, a person will get in your face and they'll tell you, like, I don't know, like, you're not able to understand what's an opinion and then what's a real fact. Like, when am I arguing truth, and then when am I arguing my interpretation of truth? And overall, I think that just leads to like a genuine misunderstanding. You get what I'm saying? That's why balance is so important, yes. And you have to go about doing that yourself, because if not, things won't get checked. It is somebody on social media that agrees with anything you say. Meaning, if I say, I think the sky is green, it's somebody that will say, yes, it's true. And they won't say, oh, well, I have the opinion. No. They will say, no, the sky is actually green. Girl, psychosis. So anyway, how do you use social media? Me, when it comes down to social media, I take everything as a grain of salt, and I'm just really, really mindful. I think like I've learned a lot of things on social media, and social media has definitely blessed me and affected me. But I also have to say too that the negative impact of social media is, being subjected to like people's cruelty, unprovoked, people saying and talking to you any kind of way, telling you to unalive yourself in your comments. You get what I'm saying? People just stitching your videos and dogging you out like you're not a human being. And I also think like the constant rage bait and the constant clickbait, the constant manipulation. You will watch a video and that shit ain't got no substance at all. Like a bitch done took you through the whole video just to say absolutely nothing. I hate the excessive manipulation. You purchase an ebook thinking you finna get substance and then a whole give you nothing but some vocabulary words. I didn't buy this ebook just so you could tell me what I already know. A bitch would give you an ebook and tell you have faith and keep God first. Huh? What? Like, bro, I didn't need to spend $153 for that. So it's a lot of Forex shit that's going on social media. Very Forex coded, if you know what I mean. So I don't like these. You know what I mean? I don't like these. Now, something that I want to say right before I finish and really get off into like my main topics for the second half of this live, because we are an hour and 51 minutes in, which means we 2 hours in. What I want to say is this: I want to just encourage everybody, start having more empathy, right? Get out of echo chambers. Stop listening to things that are only in alignment with what you agree. Stop being ego driven and emotionally driven. Learn how to watch a video, listen to something, and then relax when you see it. Don't allow what you see and what you watch on social media to immediately overtake you and move you. Also, be able to step out of social media and be grounded. You need to socialize. You need to go to third-party spaces. You need to go to school. You need to be around other kinds of people, because I'm about to get into something in a minute, right? But you need to do that. Empathy is a big thing. The biggest thing that I've seen on social media now is everybody is in their ego, right? We in our ego real bad. I saw a video of a young lady where she talked about how if she doesn't want to greet you, she's not going to greet you, and she doesn't care if you're her friend or if you're a stranger. If she don't want to greet you, she don't have to. That's ego. Like, that's ego, and that's just disrespect. That's being disrespectful. That's not being autonomous. That's not being boundaries. No, that is ego. Like, we are getting too arrogant, right? Nobody wants to connect with anybody. Like, I saw somebody make a video and they said the reason why the club has died is because everybody want to be the main character. I want to give everybody an ego check in this room, and I want to let you know you are not a main character. You are not special, and you are not important. No more than anybody else. We are all humans. We all bleed. We all come from a background. We all got things. In truth and in essence, we are all equal. We are not better or more than one another. Get out of your ego into thinking that when you go out into spaces, you better than people and you too good to talk and relate and socialize. Now, obviously, I know when we conceptualize and we say, okay, well, I'm better than certain things. Okay, that's cool. But let that be a part of your standards and your boundaries and not just simply your ego. Don't be moving like you all that and you so special. And get out of this inability to socialize and connect with other human beings. Start building connections. Start going out and greeting people and speaking to people. Stop being so withdrawn into your own bubble in your own circle, right? Get off social media and go places that you do not want to be, and start getting around other people that are not in your preference. I'm not saying go around people that are the opposite of what you like, but go around people that are not your preference. If you prefer one thing, go try something else. Go diversify yourself, because when you do not diversify yourself, you stay stagnant and you don't see the way that you're dying. A lot of us, we dying and we're not even able to recognize it, but that's a big thing. It's a lot of like ego that's going on now. Like, oh, well, my family mistreated me and I'm done with my family and I'm done with relationships, and oh, I don't want to be in relationships and I don't want to hang around nobody because I'm trying to put me first. All of that a lot of times just be ego. Oh, well, if a friend, ego. You are not the center of reality. You are just a part of the world. You are a regular human being. You are not all that. You are not the only person to go through pain. You're not the only person to go through trauma. You're not the only person that got a story. You are not exclusive. You are amongst many. It's other people that got views and ideas and things just like you. You just one of the people that got it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we unique, but we're not exclusive. We're not the only person to be able to have something. You get what I'm saying? So ground yourself and start being realistic. Start being more realistic and more grounded about things. Like, humble yourself. Like, it's It's really extreme. And I think we may need to do a video about that in another time. Now, moving on, right? The African proverb that I put up for the second half of this live says that a brown leaf, right, is a warning to the green leaves. Okay? When you see a brown leaf fall, that is a warning to the other green leaves. And what I want to talk about today is how pernicious our environment can be. In the same way that dating apps and social media can corrupt us, so too can our environment, right? We have to be super, super mindful of where we come from, okay? In the regards of a lot of things that are normalized to us are not normal based on where we live, based on the household that we grew up from, based on our preferences, based on our personality, right? And just who we are. And essentially what I want to remind us to do is I want us to be extremely mindful of who we watch and what we consume and what we engage with. There is a Bible verse that says bad company ruins good morals, right? And even if it's not bad company, a bad environment can also do the same. I remember seeing just a couple of days ago, I saw a gentleman that I went to school with homeless on the side of the street. And me seeing him homeless on the side of the street, it really did something to me. Like, it really shocked and gagged me, because me and him are the same age. We both went to, elementary school, right? So to see him in that position was really, really crazy. And when I walk around my neighborhood, just a couple hours ago, somebody was shooting, right? And when I go around my neighborhood, a lot of times I see prostitutes, I see, people that are strung out, on substances. I see dealers, I see a lot of different stuff, which isn't to say that I live in this extreme, excessive, crime-ridden environment that, oh my God, it's just so much crime and my environment is just so evil and so wicked and so destroyed. No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that your environment takes a toll on you. When you live in a neighborhood where all you see is struggling families and abused children or neglected children, when all you see is violence and just, crab in a bucket behavior, that stuff makes you feel very, very congested, right? And your environment at some point begins to become your view of reality, right? Where you really begin to feel okay, damn, bitch, I'm actually being suffocated right now. Oh my God, you know what I mean? Because whatever environment we grow up in, over time, we adapt to it, right? We adapt skills and qualities and responses that match where we are so that we can be able to navigate. And what I want us to understand is down the street faith only breeds neighborhood results. And whatever mentality you develop in survival requires you to stay in survival to utilize it. A lot of us, our vision and our understanding of ourselves does not expand or surpass the environment that we are in. And many of us, we are not aware of the toll that our environment has taken on the way that we feel about ourselves and the way that we feel about others, right? If you came from an environment of extreme scarcity, that now begins to pour off into your relationship with food and your relationship with money, because you're used to that scarcity, right? And all I'm saying is it is imperative that we are always aware of who we are, our principles, our morals, our integrities, because ultimately those are the things that are going to preserve us no matter the environment that we are in. It is so important that we meditate. It is so important that when we can, we subject ourselves to different experiences, because it is so easy to get complacent, right? It is one thing for your environment to be one thing, okay? It's one thing for your environment to be bad, but once you kind of give up on yourself and once you succumb to your environment, it's over. You get what I'm saying? You can take somebody out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of you. So all I'm saying is, no matter what environment you may be in, do not allow it to seep into your view of yourself and your view of reality. Because whatever you identify as, you will identify with. And whatever you identify with, normally you identify as it. And a lot of us, we've gotten into a place where we can't understand the distinction between our environment for the moment and then our view of our world. Once your momentary environment becomes your view of the world, you will not be able to conceptualize outside of it. It will now become the box that you stay in. And I want us to be very, very, very mindful. And I want us to be very, very, very wary of that. And the way that you prevent those things is to remind yourself of what your values are, is to remind yourself of what your dreams are, right? Is to remind yourself of the vision that you wish for yourself, right? It is to make sure that you, when you can, you get around different things. And if you can't do it physically, do it through social media. Watching different videos to see people who live in different ways, right? Leveraging your social media, making sure that you meditate when you can as a way to calm your mind, because only until the waters are clear can you see your reflection in them. But moreover, it is so important, right, that we make sure that we are nurturing ourselves and that we are tending to our feelings and tending to our emotions, because more often the demand of our environment comes before the regulation of ourselves. And the minute that you put your emotions on the back burner, what they do is they begin to subconsciously and on the background build up. And over time, before you know it, those unprocessed emotions begin to process you. So we have to make sure that we continue to nurture ourselves, that we continue to stay grounded. And you got to remember, this is your environment. You will not be here forever. You won't be in your mama house or your daddy house or your grandma house. You will not always be in the hood. You will not always be at college. You will not always be at that dead-end job. You will not always be in that broken relationship. You will not always be where you are. You will not always be here. But the minute that you kind of give up, and the minute that all you can conceptualize is where you are, that is all you will ever be. So it is imperative that we do not give up with a dream, okay? Because your dream is what's going to cause you to go beyond where you are. You know what I mean? And it's not about just dreaming and having faith and then not working, because it is written that faith without works is dead. But it is also written that a people without a vision shall perish. What is your vision? And tonight, I encourage everybody to construct a vision board for yourself if you have not already, right? Identify what is the vision that you wish for your life. What are your dreams? What do you want? Do not allow this world to take away your dream, okay? Capitalism is real. It's hard out here for a pimp when he's trying to get the money for the rent, right? We cannot lie and we can't pretend as though there is not difficulties and a lot of crazy stuff that's going out into the world, especially if you come from a neighborhood where you're seeing people get shot and killed all day. It's hard to dream and imagine a world outside of that when that's all you're seeing, okay? But it is important for us to have a dream. I know it may be hard. I know it may be difficult. I know some of us may feel like, what's the point? I know some of us may feel like we can't do it, and we may feel like low self-esteem, doubt. But you got to understand that that's the effects of your environment speaking. And you got to be able to recognize that. And you got to be able to nurture yourself and pour into yourself and speak life into yourself and reinforce the dream and allow the dream to reinforce you. Okay? Be ye encouraged by your dream. Be ye encouraged by fellowship. If nothing that I say in this live today has impacted you in any way, please take these words and allow these words to sow seeds into your heart, into your mind, into your spirit, and may you please water them with attention, with energy, and with action. I encourage us, what are your dreams? What do you want for your career? What do you want for dating? What do you want your body to look like? What are your values? What do you value? What is integrity to you, right? This is the way that you stave off the grave effects. A lot of us, we complain a lot about fake friends and users and abusers. When you have distinct values, your values create boundaries. Boundaries act as perimeters that preserve you. And what preserves you? Your integrity. When you have a virtue or a principle set in place, if my principle is honesty, anytime somebody is not honest with me in the particular context, I'm going to leave them, because that's how I preserve myself, right? You will not have a high quality experience when you don't value a high quality experience. One of the biggest issues, right, is that we are unleashed upon the world without any internal facility, right? We're not taught emotional intelligence. We're not taught how to think. The only thing that we are taught is what to think, right? And then we are set out into a world that does not align with what we're taught to think. A lot of us, we're grieving the life that we thought we were supposed to have. And the thing about it is, it's not that we're grieving the life that we thought we were supposed to have because we can't have it. We are grieving the life that we thought we were supposed to have because we were not taught nor given the skill set to manifest, right? Or to usher that life into reality. Because these things take work. You get what I'm saying? When you think about having an amazing career, when you think about having an amazing job, when you think about all of that, That takes time. It takes patience. And a lot of us, because we don't know the skill set, we feel like, oh my God, it's impossible. I can't do it. I can't have it. But you can have it. But you got to understand there is more to a life than a dream, than just a dream, right? Dreams have to be turned into reality. In order to do that, it takes skill. It takes work. You will not be able to reap a harvest if you do not tend to those seeds. You have to be a good steward. And I'm encouraging everybody to be a steward and to do the research and identify what it is that I need to really take care of myself in my life, right? One of the things that I think really happens, and that's really an issue with us, right, is we are taught what to do, or more importantly, we are taught what to go after, but we are not taught how. You know what I mean? We're taught, okay, go after money, but we're not taught how we're supposed to go after money and how we're supposed to get money. We're taught get a relationship, or we're taught to pursue these things, but in what way? And unfortunately, because we're not given the etiquette, or because we're not given the standard or the criteria on how to materialize these things, we often fall prey to exploitation, right? And that just simply looks like I want love, and because all I know is what I want, but I don't have a healthy foundation or a healthy criteria to get it, I am now allowing myself to be exploited, or I'm exploiting others because I think that this is what's necessary in order to get the things that I want. And it is not true. Instant gratification leads to us thinking that we have to exploit ourselves. Capitalism has us thinking that we have to exploit ourselves or that we have to exploit others. Moving with integrity is not quick, right? However, it is quality, and quality will always be better than quantity. It is better for you to be single and wait for a person that loves you and a person that will respect your body than it is for you to date 1,000 people that don't give a fuck about you. It is better for you to wait to have sex with a person that respects your body and a person that connects you and is willing to be intimate with you and respect every crevice and aspect of you than it is for you to just randomly get into a whole bunch of hookups with a motherfucker that don't see you as nothing more than a nut. I am not saying... Girl, my ears itching so bad. You know, your ear just itch real good. That's some good stuff right there. I'm not saying, oh, don't casually date, or, don't have casual sex. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is make sure the things that you do are integral. We are not taught to have any sense of integrity. We are not taught any parameters or any guidelines to go about getting our needs and our wants met, which is the reason why we will do any and everything to get what we need and to get what we want. As you begin to get older, you begin to realize that it is not enough for you to just gratify a need, a want, a desire, or an impulse, right? That's what maturity comes in at, because maturity is when you have the awareness, right, and the skill set to be aware of what you want and then how to go about getting it, and whether or not some of the things that you want actually need to be answered, right, and fed and given into. A lot of us, whatever we feel, we let our emotions completely and totally dominate us, and we're not really gonna go far if we continue to get like that. You gotta move away from instant gratification, and you have to start moving more into long-term sustainability. I think one of the biggest issues in the ways in which we are raised, because we're not really educated in the ways that we should be, is that we don't understand something that we don't really understand is how to go about getting our needs met, right? Which is why we fall into codependency, or why we fall into like self-centered selfishness, right? It's less about us being bad people, and it's more about us not being educated on the proper way, right? All I know is I want love, but there's nobody to teach me how to get love. So because I don't know how to get love, I don't really know what's healthy and what's unhealthy. So I just go about doing it, right? Here's an example. We say things like communication is important, right? And many of us, we share the sentiment that communication is important. And it is. Communication is important, right? But communication is only one aspect of a greater skill set, right? It's not just about what you say. It's also about how you say it and the manner in which you say it, right? Which means it is about the message, it is about the tone, and it is about the delivery. You get what I'm saying? The message is the content. The delivery and the tone is the context, right? Which then paints a full picture. I want to use that framework to talk about getting our needs met. Your need is the content. Your integrity and your principles is the context. When you do not have appropriate context, you will not know how to appropriately get your needs met. And you will confuse the meeting of your needs, right, for a good thing. You think that, okay, well, just because I got my need met, that I'm happy, because that's all you cared about. All you cared about was getting the need met. Okay, yes, I'm good, I'm done. No, it's not enough to know what you want. You have to also know how do you want it. That is what will protect you from exploiting other people and being exploited, okay? We not given that, right? All we taught is go get married, go get in a relationship, and we not given nothing else. You know what I mean? All we think is I want to feel safe. Here's the thing, right? When you have needs, wants, and desires, but you don't have any mitigation, if you don't have any processing system, right? Any like criteria or anything that kind of like manages, right? Like any kind of like awareness, what it does is it fails to create a distinction, and it can create codependency, or it can create self-centeredness, right? And the reason why it creates codependency and the reason why it creates selfishness or self-centeredness and selfishness is because there is not a proper distinction between what you need and your ability to accomplish or your ability to fulfill what you need. All you see is what you need and who and what can meet it. That's it. Right? And once that happens, we now position ourselves in a way to make our needs the responsibility of the world, right? That's what happens when we get in survival mode. The only thing we thinking about is just getting our needs met. We not thinking about who, what, when, how, because we not conceptualizing all of that. All we thinking of is like, I want love, or like, I want money. And all you think of is what's going to help me get money. What can I use to get money? But that's a flaw, right? Because money in and of itself is neutral. You know what I mean? And money in and of itself is a tool. So when you fail to realize that money is a tool and you start seeing money more as like a thing that meets your needs, you fail to realize that because money is a tool, it matters how you wield it and it matters how you go about it. And also too, there isn't a responsibility on you anymore now. It's not a responsibility on how I go about and get the money and how I go about making the money. Like, I'm just focusing on the gratification. We have to be responsible. It is not enough for you to need and want and have an impulse and have a desire. You have to also be mindful and have awareness, right? And when you have awareness, right, it makes a distinction. And the distinction is awareness is my ability to be able to understand what I need and what I want, right? And then to be able to understand a world that exists outside of that, right? Because the world is neutral. That's all the world is. You know what I mean? The world is neutral. When I understand my needs and my wants, like for example, okay, I want love. I'm able to rationalize like, okay, this is something that I want. And now because I have that integrity set in place, right? And now because I have that sense or that idea of how I want that relationship, now I'm not just thinking about, okay, well, what's the first person that's gonna love me? Now I'm more intricate and I'm more intentional about who I want to love me and how I want to be loved, right? I'm seeing a broader picture, and now I'm able to be more responsible and I'm able to be more accountable. You know what I mean? As opposed to just saying I want love, because now if I just say I want love, I'm putting a responsibility on the person. You know what I mean? Either I'm making the person responsible, like I'm not acknowledging that there are people who exist outside of people. I'm not acknowledging that there are people who exist outside of those that are there to meet my needs. You get what I'm saying? Which means I'm not seeing the world as a Venn diagram. I'm not understanding that there's me, there's you, and then there's mutual ground. When all I think about is instant gratification, I'm only thinking about getting myself met, right? Codependency and self-centeredness is self-centeredness, and it's all the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not thinking about other people, you're just thinking about what other people can do for you. And you got to realize that you are responsible for getting your needs and your dreams met. The world is not solely responsible. That is what opens you up to having a broken attachment style, like an avoidant attachment style or an anxious attachment style. That's what sets you up for codependency. That's what sets you up for enmeshment. That's what sets you up for self-centeredness and selfishness. It's not enough for you to just get your needs and your wants met. You have to also have awareness on who, what, when, and where. Once I understand that I am responsible for my needs, I will not feel threatened. I won't feel insecure. I won't feel so weird and awkward. Why? Because I understand I'm responsible for getting my needs met, not money. Let me give you another example of what I mean when I say this. I don't trust people. I trust my ability to trust people. Why? Because if I just blindly trust people, I'm making people responsible, which is putting all this responsibility on them. I'm making you responsible to tell me the truth. I'm making you responsible to be honest with me, right? Which means that I'm engaging with you in an inappropriate way because you don't owe me anything. And that also sets me up to be used and abused. And it also sets me up to be used and abused because I'm making you emotionally responsible, right? And I'm also not using my discernment. I'm not using my ability to critically think. I'm not using my ability to actually inquisitively question and check out if you are who you are. I'm just blindly trusting you. But how can I blindly trust you when you not being who you say you are only impacts me? People failing you doesn't hurt them, it hurts you, which is why you should be responsible and accountable for the way that you go about getting your needs met and making sure that you're prioritizing good people, places, and things, and you're rooting and things out. Once you know that you are capable of getting your need, like, let me give you this example. Once I know that I don't trust people, I trust my ability to trust people, I'm no longer worried. I'm not anxious and I'm not uncertain. Why am I no longer anxious and uncertain? Because I understand that I just got to critically think and I trust my skills. I'm not uncertain about my ability to think. I would be uncertain if I was dependent upon you telling me the truth, because now I got to question, are you being honest? Why your story don't mix up? But when I'm trusted in my own intuition and my own critical thinking, I don't need none of that. I'm able to see the truth, meaning the objectivity. You know what I mean? I'm not enmeshed or I'm not codependent upon you to be or do anything for me. I'm not attached. An attachment is when we outsource to get our needs met, right? There is nothing that meets your needs but you. You get what I'm saying? You have a need, you have a want, and you have an impulse. And there is something that will gratify that need and that impulse. But you are the thing in the middle, right? You are the mean, you are the medium, and you are the mode, right? You are the thing in the middle that makes sure, you got to make sure that factors align for this to come over here. It cannot just be this and this. This is how we be thinking. We be thinking need and then fulfillment of need. And then that just have you blind and fucked up. It has to be need and then awareness and criteria. Okay, responsibility. Okay, this is aligning. Okay, this is right. And then, okay, boom. You cannot be gratified by everything. All right? When we are children, we're dependent on our environment and we're dependent on our mom and our dad and our family. And we understood, we saw how even though we were dependent upon them, how they failed us, right? So if you saw how dependency fails you when it came down to your parents, why would you then go be blindly dependent upon money? Now you so dependent upon money, right? That when the money look funny, now you get anxious and you get afraid and you get scared. And a lot of that anxiety and a lot of that stability and that instability comes because our stability was in the job, right? And not in our skill set. You get what I'm saying? When your stability is in your skill set, you gonna eat forever. It's the difference between being taught how to fish and somebody just giving you fish. I do not want someone to give me seedless fruit because if I get seedless fruit, I gotta keep coming back to purchase it. We have to develop the skill set because once you develop the skill set, the responsibility is now on you, which means now you have a level of control and you have a level of stability and security, right? But if my stability is in my job, if I get fired from my job, I'm lost and now I don't know what to do because I don't have any skills. I don't have anything. Stop being dependent upon people. Stop being, not even dependent. Stop being, because there's nothing wrong with dependency. Stop being codependent Stop being lazy. You get what I'm saying? No, no, no. You can't just go to a job and just think, okay, yeah, like, bitch, I'm just blindly gonna trust this job to make sure I get. No, 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 no. Because why would you depend on anybody or anything? Or not even depend. I don't want to use that word. Why would you shift the responsibility of getting your needs met on people, places, and things that do not get hurt if your needs don't get met? The job don't get hurt if I don't go learn how to read. The job doesn't get hurt if I don't go and get a degree. The job doesn't get hurt if I don't go to trade school and develop skills. The job doesn't get hurt. It doesn't. And you got to also understand too that people also have their own needs and their own wants. So when you live life and you only focused about getting your needs met and instant gratification and stability and safety and security and validation and love and all of that, all you're viewing people as is what they can do for you, instead of seeing them as other human beings who have their own needs and wants. So it's less about, do you align with me, and more about, do you fulfill me? Do you complete me? And that's not what jobs should be, because that creates codependency, that creates attachment, it creates enmeshment. Now you can't leave the job because you're afraid, right? This also goes off when it comes down to like an avoidant attachment, okay? If I'm correct me if I'm not, avoidant attachments happen when we grow up in environments that emotionally neglect us, right? When we are in environments that emotionally neglect and abandon us, but also when we are neglected and abandoned in terms of responsibility. So essentially, we have to be responsible for ourselves. Avoidant attachment usually comes, right, when you have to be responsible for yourself at an early age, right? So parentified. So this also creates, again, like that emotional neglect factor where you realize I can't trust people, I can't depend on nobody, right? Because nobody's here for me, which then creates hyper individuality, right? And it creates a lack of intimacy. Reason why it creates a lack of intimacy, because you start to learn there is no point in communicating and being vulnerable and being intimate with other people because nobody's really there for you. You can't trust. Intimacy and vulnerability kind of becomes unsafe and it kind of becomes a threat. And there's just nobody there, right? So you start to mirror that environment back with yourself. Also, because you were parentified, you did not have access to community. So because you didn't have community, you did not have a sense of stability and a sense of safety and a sense of security, right? You had to create this sense of security and this sense of stability, right? So therefore, a person with an avoidant attachment, they have an attachment to stability, they have an attachment to security, and they have an attachment to safety, right? And they get this, they accomplish this goal through performance, through control, and through things like career, right? This creates This creates a perfectionistic dynamic. Why? Because perfectionism is essentially saying, right, if I'm not perfect, I'm not gonna meet the standard. And if I don't meet the standard, I'm not gonna get my needs met. That's what perfectionism is saying. I have to perform to be enough, which is why I said performance, right? Which is why I also said career. That's why it also starts to trickle off into career, and it starts to trickle off into control. If I'm in control, I will have stability, I'll have security, I'll have safety. And I have control by using logic, I have control by using distance. I don't get into intimate relationships and I don't socialize with people because that makes me get emotional and I can't really control that. So I isolate because I can control when I'm all alone. I'm hyper independent. I go into my career because I can control my career. Why? Because my career is based on how much I do. So everything I'm doing with the objective of getting a need met. I have to perform 25/8, which means I'm hyper productive. I got to perform 25/8 for stability, for security, and for safety, right? Which means I have to constantly be in control. I have an attachment to control because control is what I use to get my needs met. That is an attachment, right? Which means that's an unhealthy relationship. The relationship is not founded, right? The relationship is not founded on awareness. It's founded on codependency. It's on codependency with things like control. I gotta always be in control. If you ever heard somebody who say, I fear the unknown, that's like a form of avoidance. Why? Why is it called an avoidant attachment? Because I avoid anything that I cannot control, because anything that I cannot control does not guarantee me stability and security and safety. What you need is security, stability, and safety. And you're going about it in a dysfunctional way. Why? Because we adapted. This was the household, right? We learned these things in the household, and now we're carrying these things out in the adult life. You want stability, security, and safety. Now it's time for you to recognize and become aware of the fact that you can get stability, security, and safety in other ways outside of what you're doing it. Right? The thing that you have to understand is that when you have an attachment, you are not in control. When you are in an avoidant attachment, you are not in control. You are not in control. A lot of us, we think that there is no such thing as control. Control is an illusion. You can't have control. The only thing that you can have is responsibility, right? So now you start getting into this mindset where you feel like the minute that you don't have any control, everything gonna fall apart. The minute that you're not perfect and you're not performing right, that's exhausting and that's extremely taxing, and that breaks you down over time. That's not a healthy way to get your needs met. Move with responsibility. Move with integrity. You know what I mean? Move with femininity, with nurturing, with care. And I'm saying this on a superficial level because it goes deeper than that. But there is other ways to get those needs met. And we have to stop mirroring the environments that we come from. Will it always be considered healthy if there's an immediate and outlasting benefit? Me and you have had conversations like this before. And I'm going to say this to you, right? Because I remember you saying this before where you talked about you being okay with an attachment or something. And to that, I will say, you're gonna have to start learning how to like challenge yourself, and you have to get out of your ego. And I'm not saying it as a derogatory thing of like, I'm better than you, bitch. No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is you have to get out of the things that helped you to survive if you want to start thriving and living, because that's survival based. Avoidant attachment is not healthy. Just because I smoke crack and crack makes me feel relieved in the moment because I'm dealing with extreme heavy emotions, just because it benefited me in that moment and gave me relief, is it healthy? No. Just because I'm angry and I slapped the shit out of a bitch and now I ain't angry no more and I'm happy because I got emotional relief, was that healthy? No. Right? That to me, I chalk that up as like instant gratification. You're focusing on the what. You're not focusing on the how, and you're not focusing on the why. The benefit in your mind is getting your need met. That's no benefit at all. You have to start thinking about, how do I go about getting my needs met, right? And when you focus solely on getting your needs met, you're not moving with responsibility. You're moving in survival. You're moving in scarcity. You're moving in desperation. Lack creates desperation. How I wrote that? I gotta remember how I wrote that, because I ate when I made that. Damn, I ate that up. I think, like I said, lack creates desperation. Desperation creates external validation, and then external validation creates attachment. I think that's how I wrote it up. Essentially, right? You have to stop thinking about what's gonna meet your need. You got to think about how. Is it integral? Is it healthy? Otherwise, this is how you get into an attachment. And attachment is really nothing more than external validation when you think about it, because you're outsourcing your needs. You are focused more on the thing's ability to meet your need in a way where you can't break away from it. And you can't see it for what it is because you're only thinking about its ability to support you. And you're afraid that if I leave this thing, who am I going to be? I'm not going to have anything. Oh my God, I'm going to lose everything. Oh my God. No. That is an attachment. You should never need the external validation or the attachment of anything. You don't need to be attached to people, places, and things. If anything, be attached to your ability to get your needs met, right? Not just what meets your needs. Don't be attached to control, because when you're attached to control, you're not actually conceptualizing what control really means. You know what I mean? Like, you're looking at things you begin to look at things in a real black and white way. You don't look at the full spectrum. It just becomes need gratification, right? And you caught up more in the moment. Don't get so caught up in the moment that you forget to see the bigger picture of how things go. This is one of the reasons why it's hard for people to get out of abusive relationships, right? Because they lacked love. Let's say they lacked love. That lack for love created desperation. When you're desperate is the opposite dark side of passion. You know what I mean? Passion is when you are fulfilled and you are seeking something that adds unto that fulfillment, right? But there is a level of like internal fulfillment that you already have when you are a passionate person. When you are a desperate person, you are empty. You know what I mean? You're empty and you're looking to be filled up. A passionate person is already filled up, right? They don't move hollow. A passionate person is not hollow. They are already fulfilled, and it's a level of reciprocity, right? They are pouring into something, and the thing that they're pouring into is also pouring back into them. When you are desperate, you are empty, and you are looking for anything that will fulfill you. Moreover, when you are desperate, you are focused more on quantity than you are quality, because desperation doesn't care about who fills it up. You get what I'm saying? So you got to stop being desperate in the sense of stop allowing your needs and your emotions and your desires and things to mindlessly control you. That'd be our problem. We just feel a need and then we run with it. No, you got to have self-awareness, because self-awareness is responsibility. And responsibility is saying, yes, I have a need, but because I have a need, I have to also ensure that I'm getting this need met appropriately. We're not taught responsibility. We're taught just get it done. Go for it. You know what I mean? And it's like, no. So an avoidant attachment gets your need met, but the thing that an avoidant attachment does is an avoidant attachment creates a toxic relationship with performance, right? An avoidant attachment ruins your self-esteem. An avoidant attachment disconnects you from intimacy and relationships, right? And an avoidant attachment also leads you into having a nervous breakdown over time. And that's just a few of the things that having an avoidant attachment does. An avoidant attachment is very detrimental. If you've ever noticed people who have avoidant attachments, they don't want friends, they don't want relationships, they're always isolated and separated from people. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they're very individual, kind of like base people. They don't talk about their feelings and their emotions a lot. You know, they're not very like emotional and reflective. Also, too, avoidant attachment people, oftentimes they intellectualize, which means what? They will use logic instead of their feelings. They don't care about their emotions. They're always logic. Avoidant attachments usually are the strong friends. Avoidant attachments sometimes can be the parentified children. Avoidant attachments can also be, you know, the black sheeps, right? Anybody that was neglected and forced to be responsible. But what you have to understand is that this dynamic is forged in neglect. It is forged in neglect and abandonment. It is put in a position where you were not given proper community. You were not given proper love and proper relationship, and you were forced to have to overcompensate. An avoidant attachment style is an overcompensation for a deficit at your own expense. An anxious attachment style is just that in reverse. So where an avoidant attachment style causes you to overcompensate, and when you are in an avoidant attachment, you are so focused on overcompensating. That's why you're so hyper-focused on your career. You're so hyper-focused on going to college and getting standards. You're so hyper-focused on being perfect, on being smart, on being intellectual, on saying everything right. But it is an abusive relationship. Because you think the minute that you fail and the minute that you don't do everything perfect and the minute that you step off into the unknown, guess what? That is an immediate threat. You are constantly in a threat zone. You constantly in fight or flight, meaning you constantly either defensive or you either ready to abandon, and you stuck in your comfort zone. You know what I mean? And you don't even have a really healthy relationship, because when you are an avoidant, you're focused more on doing what's perfect instead of doing what's authentic. Which means you don't really learn how to do things. You just learn how to do things in a way that guarantees your survival. You know what I mean? Survival is not the equivalent of living. And So no. And the opposite of is an anxious attachment style, right? Where you are, oh, I thought somebody was looking at me. Where you are codependent. In the same way an avoidant attachment makes you overcompensate as an individual, right? And when you're overcompensating as an individual, you don't have time for relationships and intimacy, because only people who are leveled and in a healthy relationship can get into intimacy and can get into relationships. Now again, avoidants are deceived into thinking that they're intellectual, that they're smart, that they work hard, that they're productive. No, they are abusive. An avoidant attachment neglects their emotions. They neglect their bodily needs to constantly show up and constantly perform. There is never an off switch. Go, 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 go. Do. No, they don't celebrate themselves because they're not doing things with, like, it's not, they're only doing things for survival, right? Celebration is something that requires a sense of self. Like, celebration is something, you have to be in a certain mindset to be celebratory, because in order to celebrate, you have to recognize what you've done as an accomplishment. And an avoidant attachment can never recognize anything they do as an accomplishment, because nothing that they do is designed to accomplish. It's only designed to be in control, and control guarantees stability, security, and safety, which means everything that they do is meant for security, stability, and safety. They are always moving with survival in mind, which means that everything that they do is a threat to their survival, right? It's either a threat to their survival or it guarantees their survival. That's all. That's why they're very harsh on themselves. That's why they're very critical on themselves. That's why they're very hyper-productive. That's why they work themselves into the ground the way that they do. That's why they also don't want relationships, right? Because intimacy is a threat. You getting close to my heart. You want to be my friend. You want to be my lover. You getting too close. You getting too intimate. I can't control this. I don't understand this. Because intimacy is not about performance, and intimacy isn't about control. Intimacy is about vulnerability. And how can you be vulnerable when you're not in control? You feel unsafe. That's why when an avoidant attachment gets into a relationship, they can become anxious. Right? An avoidant will get with an anxious, and an anxious will become avoidant, and an avoidant will become an anxious. Right? And I would argue a simple way to get out of these attachment styles, which is only a superficial recommendation, you know what I mean? You have to start understanding that getting your needs are the what. Okay? What, when, how, why, who. You gotta be able to answer these questions. What do I want? From who's responsible for getting it to me? Or who do I want it from? How do I want it? What's healthy? What's unhealthy? When you're in survival mode, it is impossible for you to be psychological, which means it's impossible for you to conceptualize and intellectualize right from wrong, because the only thing you're thinking about is your survival. The body is designed for preservation. That's why it's so hard for us to a lot of times conceptualize whether or not something is safe or healthy or not, because the only interpretation that we have of it is it gonna benefit my well-being or not? So we gotta stop moving. We gotta understand my well-being is my responsibility. So once I know that I'm responsible for my well-being, I stop moving with survival on my shoulders, and I start moving with survival being in the forefront. And it's less about being in survival, and it's more about me being responsible for getting my needs met, right? And once I become responsible, I now shift the authority on myself. There is no longer any need for attachments and codependency or no, there's no need for any of that anymore, because I understand, okay, I'm responsible, which means that I am secure, I am safe, and I am stable in the knowing that I'm going to take care of me. Which again, an example is, I don't trust people. I trust my ability to trust people. What would happen if you blindly just look at people in a black and white, right? That now means that you have to control people and manipulate people, places, and things in order to orchestrate a level of security. This is the reason why a lot of people can't get anywhere in life, because they only feel safe so long as they're able to manipulate. Because again, they haven't curated that stability and that safety within. You're not responsible for your safety. you are responsible for people, places, and things making you safe, right? Which is a form of external validation, which then creates an attachment. You got to shift that. I'm validated by my ability and my skill set, which means that I'm connected. Like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I need love, but the love got to be integral. Okay, opposite, anxious attachment style. And if an avoidant attachment style is a hyperfixation and hyperfocus on self, an anxious attachment style is a hyperfixation on others, right? So an avoidant is usually self-centered and selfish. An anxious is usually codependent, right? Codependence or anxious attachments can deceive themselves into thinking that they are empathetic. They say, oh, I'm empathetic, and oh, I'm sensitive. No, you are not sensitive. You are enmeshed. Enmeshment is when you remove when you remove the Venn diagram. A Venn diagram says there's me, there's you, and then there's where we overlap, which means I have an identity outside of you, you have an identity outside of me, and there's aspect of our identity where we come together. A relationship is two things. First of all, a relationship is a vehicle of transportation. In order to get in a relationship, you have to understand where you are and where you wish to go. You know what I mean? You got to have that in mind. And when you talk about relations, right? Relations are all about interaction, which means that with that being said, you have to have in mind how you want to relate and how you want to interact with someone. You cannot relate and interact with someone when you do not have an identified sense of self. I can't get into a relationship with you when I'm too prioritized with getting my needs met, because there's not enough room for you when it comes down to getting my needs met. I can't be with someone who I need, because if I need you, I'll put my needs above you. Either I'm going to put my needs above you or you above my needs. I meet my needs. I don't need you, I want you. Because when I need you, I'm attached to you. I can't let you go. You understand? So with an anxious attachment, they are deceived into thinking that they're empaths. If you are a person that says, oh, I feel energy at an extreme rate, and oh my God, I'm really energetic, and I feel, and I feel, and I feel, and I feel, depending on the context of that, you may be enmeshed, which means, think of enmeshment as two wires, right? When entanglement happens, you are not able to distinguish one wire from the other because they're so intertangled. That's enmeshment. When you are not able to separate yourself, right? Your emotions from the emotions of others, your needs from the needs of others, your identity from the identity of others. And now, instead of being self-centered, you become people-centered, right? Where you center yourself solely around others. And the thing about it is, even codependency, right, and people-pleasing and codependency is still a form of selfishness. It's just going about it a different way, right? A selfish person will disregard the needs of others in order to get their needs met. A codependent meets the needs of others in hopes that those people will meet their needs. Codependents only adapt and show up for people because they want to get something back. They are not these loving, like, people pleasing isn't even a real thing. If you like, no, it's a real thing, but like the idea, like, oh yeah, I'm pleasing people. You're pleasing people because you get something out of it, right? And when I'm codependent, I have an unhealthy relationship with you, and I expect you to meet all of my needs and all of my emotions, right? It's kind of like infantilization. I see myself as an infant, and I see you as my parent and my caregiver. And the things that I'm supposed to be responsible for, I make you responsible for. I make you responsible for reassurance, which is a form of anxious attachment. If you need constant reassurance and constant stability and constant, if when you leave a person, you overthinking and you really anxious and you always worry, do they like me? Are they thinking about me? That is all anxious attachment and codependency. Because you're expecting those needs from others. Those are things you're supposed to be needing. You know what I mean? There are things that people do for us, right? But people cannot meet the needs that, number one, you have not identified, and number two, you have not set the healthy criteria for how they're supposed to be met. For example, if I say I want love, first of all, I need to be able to show up and give myself that. And I also need to be able to identify, how do I want love in order to let somebody come into my life? Because once I know my standard, I won't be so anxious. Let's talk about an anxious attachment. An anxious attachment, anxious means uncertainty, okay? You're only anxious when there is uncertainty. So an anxious attachment simply means that you grew up in a household where emotional support and, care and all of those things, there was uncertainty around that. You know what I mean? Which means it was there, it wasn't, it was there, it wasn't, which was different from an avoidant attachment, because an avoidant attachment, there was nothing there. There was nobody. You was all on your own. You had to figure it out all on your own. And your attachment style adapts to that, right? You adapted to the environment of having nothing and nobody. With an anxious attachment style, you adapt to the environment of the uncertainty around people, which means that essentially your needs got met sometimes based on the emotional standing of the other party, right? Like if my mama was in a good mood, she loved me and she showed up for me, which means that now I began to adapt to my mother's emotional tumultuousness, right? So now I become hypervigilant, right? I am always scanning my mom's emotions. If she's happy, I'm with her and I'm laughing and I'm doing things to keep her happy. If she's mad and she's upset, I'm probably gone, or I'm probably like away. You know what I mean? Like I start to develop myself solely around everybody else's emotions and everybody else's needs. I also begin to adapt to what people want me to be. Why? Because I'm trying to increase the likelihood of me getting my needs met, right? Essentially, probably when I was growing up, the only way I would have got loved and recognized was if I was perfect, which means that I probably was a very obedient child. I probably followed all the directions, right? That's where people pleasing comes in at. People pleasing is called fawning. Fawning is when you adapt to the environment. You know what I mean? You adapt to the environment to ensure your stability. So I adapt to whatever people need me to be, because that's how I guarantee getting my needs met. Because otherwise, I did not get love and I didn't get what I needed in that way. You know what I mean? And if I did, it was real uncertain. So again, that uncertainty created anxiousness. That anxiousness started to make me overthink, right? That overthinking, it made me very hypervigilant because I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel secure, right? Disagreement could mean abandonment. Disagreement can mean neglect. So in order for me to not be neglected and not be abandoned, I had to cater and be perfect, which means that just like an avoidant attachment, I'm still performing, right? An avoidant attachment is trying to meet a perfectionist, or is trying to meet a standard. An avoidant believes that if I meet a certain standard, then I will be worthy and I'll be enough. And so long as I continue to meet this standard, I will be enough and I'll be secure. An anxious believes so long as I adapt to people's standards of what they want and people's expectations of me, I will get my needs met and I will be safe and I will be secure. Okay? Now, the danger is that when you are an anxious, you have very low self-esteem because you don't have an identity. Your identity is solely catered around being what everybody else wants you to be. You know what I mean? Your self-esteem is also in the gutter when you're an avoidant, because being an avoidant is all about perfectionism, and perfectionism is all about cruelty, right? Cruelty, punishment, criticism, nastiness. When you succeed, nothing. You don't get anything. When you fail, you're pathetic. When you're an anxious, you always trying to please and be what everybody else wants you to be. Because again, not making people happy, disagreeing, being different, it causes conflict. And conflict is dangerous. So it's like, no, I gotta cater and I gotta be what people want me to be. Now, the problem with avoidance is that with anxious people, a lot of anxious people, they value they always in a relationship, always got a boyfriend, always got a girlfriend, in and out of relationships, may use their body, as a token for love. They may be obsessed with like community, and they may think that they really love community, but it's not that they really love community. They're looking to get themselves completed through another person, right? Which is like the damsel in distress stuff. You know what I mean? Here's the thing. An avoidant and an anxious attachment style is healthy, or it is functional when you are a child and when that's how you got to go about getting your needs met. How can I tell you, right? that it would not be healthy or that it would not be functional when that was what you needed to do to get into your environment to get your needs met. Realistically speaking, the body is designed for self-preservation. Okay? So when you're in that state, when you're young, all you can do is preserve. All you can do is adapt. The body is very miraculous, and the body is designed to make itself get to where it needs to be. Avoidant attachment styles and anxious attachment styles are okay. And here's the thing, right? And I want to be very mindful of this. There is no judgment. There is no room and there is no place that anybody can judge an avoidant or an anxious attachment style, because it is not something that can be debated and it's not something that can be judged about. Here's an example. If you were a child, right, that was orphaned by your parents and you ended up going to an adoption agent, you was in an adoption agency, right, and you had foster parents and you wanted to be the child that went and got a home, you probably was very studious. You were very well mannered and your clothes was real nice and you was real perfect. Why? Because you did not want to be abandoned. You didn't want to be at a fucking adoption agency no more. You didn't want to be in the system. You wanted a family. You wanted love. And you felt like this is what and it's not even that you felt like this. That is what you needed to do at the time to go and get that love from your POV, right? There is no way that we can tell people in those situations, well, you should have had integrity and you should move like this and you should move like that, because that probably wouldn't have got them what they needed and what they wanted at the time. You know what I mean? Because you're in survival. And survival is more about making it to the next day, not even the next day. Survival is more about making it to the next moment than it is anything else. So here's the thing. If you're moving in codependency, then you had a valid reason to move in codependency. Codependency is not a character trait. Codependency is not just a behavior. Codependency is a form of self-preservation based adaptation where you are adapting to your environment in order to ensure your well-being. Quite literally speaking, if you were gay and you grew up in a homophobic household, there was no way for you to be anything other than either an anxious or an avoidant. An anxious meaning codependent because you had to cater to what your peoples wanted you to be and you had to adapt in order to be safe, or she was going to get beat and thrown out. Or an avoidant because you got beat and thrown out and now you got to survive all on your own. And not, you know what I mean? So I need us, right? I need us to get out of this garbage. And you know, I am so disgusted and I'm so angry and I'm so mad at people that get on social media and people that talk about anxious and avoidance in a negative way, because that is so childish. It is childish, it is immature, and it lets me know that you do not really understand what those things are. And if you have been a codependent, if you have been an anxious or an avoidant, if you've been, you know, a perfectionist, whatever those things, if you are also shaming yourself, then you also don't understand yourself and you are abusive. That is abuse. How dare you? That is abuse. How dare you abuse yourself for adapting in the only way that you knew how? Let's stop. Let's get fucking real here. Cause what else was you finna do? Huh? Was you gonna be in a household where you was a minor and you had no authority and no autonomy and no way to ensure well-being for yourself? These dynamics are forged in a particular environment. When you become of age, right? And you are in a position where you no longer have to be dependent, because I would argue that I would argue that avoidant attachment and anxious attachment are things that we develop when we are dependent on our environment. And we then begin to overcompensate others or ourselves to meet our needs, right? But that's when we are children. When you become an adult, you are no longer you're no longer dependent on people, places, and things. You now become dependent upon you, right? Which means you are responsible for your needs and your needs met. Your ability to be perfect is not responsible for your needs. No. Your ability to say the right thing is not responsible. Your ability to be, no, that's not responsible, because that's what they're saying. That's shifting. It's like, okay, well, control is what guarantees my, no. You guarantee your needs met. And once you understand that, then your dynamic shifts, right? The Bible says that when we are children, we do childish things, and when we become adult, we put away those things, right? When we are young, we are just like animals in the wild, essentially. You know how animals in the wild have to go into fight, right? Which means they become real aggressive and they develop, toxic poison and all of these colorful paths and stuff. Or animals in the wild, like deers, they fawn, as in like they play dead. Like kittens, they get really, really quiet and they don't make any noise until their mama come back. You know what I mean? Or like freeze, like when animals like what is it called? It's like an antelope, not antelope. Is it an antelope? Might be an antelope. But like animals like gazelles, right? Or I think an antelope. I think it's antelope. Not deers, but deer-like animals that got them long horns. You know what I'm saying? I think it's an antelope. But I feel like antelope ain't the right word. It's an antelope, but those animals that crocodiles be eating and like lions be chasing, you know what I mean? Like gazelles and all of those animals, they'll freeze and they'll scan their environment for danger. All of these things are normal. When you look at an avoidant attachment style, an avoidant attachment style, I would argue, is heavily prevalent in the fight and flight response. An anxious attachment style is heavily fluent in the in the freeze or fawn response. So avoidant is fight and flight, and anxious is freeze and fawn. These are natural things, just like animals in the wild, right? The thing is, when you become more self-aware, when you become more intelligent, right? When your emotional quotient expands and when your intellectual quotient expands, you grow less in avoidant attachment, you grow less in anxious attachment, less in all of those things, because you learn how to have a healthy dynamic and how to have your needs met appropriately. When you a kid, it's instant gratification, right? Meaning, oh, I just eat. But then I get older and I realize, okay, actually, I need to be mindful. I need to be conscious. I need to be aware. I need to be responsible. You know what I'm saying? I haven't built that skill set. And a large reason of why we haven't built that skill set is because of our environment. It is extremely hard when your environment constantly reinforces, right? So if I identify with my environment, right? Whatever I identify as, I identify with. And if my environment never changes, I never get exposed to new information. This is why it's important for us to learn. And this is why it's important for us to grow and be educated. And this is what I was talking about. I need us to make sure that we grow beyond just our environment. I get it. We're going to be in survival. Some of us, we was anxious attachments. Some of us, we was avoidant attachments. But we are grown now. It's nothing wrong with the fact that you had an attachment style. It's normal and it's natural. But it's time to elevate and it's time to grow and take the steps to educate ourselves and learn what our styles are. And it's about being healthy. But nobody can make you want it for yourself. I know that our environment can be stiff, right? Because for some of us, it's hard to grow into a loving environment when everybody just hates you. But here's what you got to realize and what you got to know. The world been the world and our world gonna always be the world. You get what I'm saying? Does that mean you have to move? Not physically. Sometimes that means you need to move socially and you need to move intellectually and emotionally. You need to experience new things. You cannot stay in your environment. I want to expound. How much time I got? I'm at 2 hours. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm gonna put this live on YouTube because this live is really good. So I'm gonna ask this question to the live. Do you guys want me to restart, right, and come and do a live right after this? Or do you guys want me to come live tomorrow night and finish this up? Do y'all want to do a part 2 tonight, please? Okay. Okay. All right. So here's the last thing that I want to say, okay? When death finds you, may it find you alive. This saying emphasizes living a full and authentic life rather than existing complacently according to the expectations of others. It suggests that the worst kind of death is for one's spirit to die long before their body. Staying in an avoidant attachment style is complacency. Staying in an anxious attachment style is complacency. Just like allowing your environment and where you come from and what you're experiencing and what you're going through to become your view of the world is complacency. It is not your responsibility nor your fault that you went through certain things, but you do got to take accountability on that though, right? Okay, I grew up in the hood. I grew up in a crazy environment. I grew up around a dark family. That does begin to impact, right? When you see darkness all the time, sometimes it can be hard to see light. But what you got to understand is you are responsible for your sense of self and your sense of reality. You are responsible for your emotional well-being. And this is not about waving a finger and pointing blame. No, this is about understanding that it is our importance to keep ourselves alive, because what you have to understand is 9 times out of 10 your environment is the way that it is for 2 reasons. Number 1, a system has been orchestrated with the intention of destroying the population, and number 2, the population has succumbed. And a lot of the population succumbs not because they didn't want to resist, not because they didn't try, but because they did not have the tools and the qualities, and therefore they were swept up. And it is important that we too do not get swept up. It is important that we too do not fall a part of the system that is designed to make us depressed, that is designed to ruin us, right? That we don't end up as mere winos on the street, that we don't end up as prostitutes that's just lost and mindless and drugged out. And I'm not saying that to say a derogatory thing, but what I'm saying is you will not be, and this is something that we must speak over our lives, you will not be working no dead-end job for the rest of your life. You're not going to be working at just living in no ghetto ass apartment where bitches is pissing in the fucking hallway and there's roaches in your fucking house and you just hate your house and you hate where you fucking live, and everywhere you go you don't see love and you don't see joy. It's just loud ass music and people fighting in the fucking lobby and shit and trash littered out everywhere. Motherfuckers got a mattress in the goddamn, parking lot, and the goddamn dumpster is overflowing with trash and garbage and shit, and they ain't got no goddamn pavement. It's just rocks that you gotta ride and walk over, and you gotta go walk and catch the goddamn bus to a job that you hate, and you just around a family that don't appreciate you and love you and like you, and you just mad and you upset. That will not be our life. You are nobody's victim. I am nobody's victim. I have power. I have a choice. I have a decision. And the thing about it is that sometimes darkness can encompass you in every way. Darkness can encompass you from the left, from the right, from the front, from the back, to the up, to the down. And in those moments, the only thing that you will have is your dream. The only thing that you will have is your principles, right? And we must understand that we cannot just be in survival. Survival is not enough, because everybody that dies does not live. It is not enough to just do the bare minimum. It is not enough to just get by. It is not enough to just get your needs met. That's not enough. That's not thriving. That's not living. At this point, I would encourage all of us to begin to choose quality over mere quantity. Okay, you got security. Okay, you getting your needs met. Okay, you feel safe, but how? And is it real safety, or is it merely an illusion that keeps you chasing, that keeps you desperate, that keeps you up? Are you really happy with hustling? Are you truly happy with getting in back seats with strange characters? Are you? Part 2. Toodles.